This is NFL Chaos with Jeremy. I am Jeremy, and I bring the chaos. Today, we are going to go over some really fun topics about the draft. We're going to talk about our least preferred pick for our worst case scenario. We'll talk about our best case scenario. We'll do the same thing for 10. We're going to talk salary crap. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. We have a very special guest. I'll introduce him right after this. I like Hutchinson the best, and I don't think Linderbaum is worth a top 10 pick. Thibodeau slipped, and I am going to grab Thibodeau. The Giants took Khalil Elam. Good for them. Kenyon Green is a guarantee in my mind. He would be such a dream pick right here. Evan Neal is still on the board. I'm not going to pick this now. That 44 pick could be tight end. That 44 pick could be a good linebacker, a good safety. We could drop back one pick and pick up a second rounder for New Orleans. We got options here. All right. And I think we're going to have options again when the draft comes. Man, I look back at those old drafts from that intro and I laugh at some of the choices and what I was talking about after that. You know, and we said it a million times, though, after free agency, everything changes. Well, guess what? Everything changed. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce my co-host. He is back from a very, very big trip. He is back. Oh, man. Did you forget who he was already? Did you forget his name? Warm welcome. Topsy.
What's up, Pat? What's up, Jeremy? How are you? Happy Easter,
on,
happy Passover, and the whole nine.
Yeah, man. Easter, Passover, the whole thing. We do nothing out here in Sacramento, man. We're by ourselves, like living on a boat.
Nothing wrong with that either. Nothing wrong with that.
We did, however, we have a special guest living in the house. We were at the dog park yesterday, and what looks to be a purebred German Shepherd, about 6 to 7 months old, was in the park running around, and somebody got him into the dog park area, and nobody knew what to do with him. So this one lady took him home and said, I can only take him for one night. We met her at the shelter, and they scanned him for chips, and he had no chip, and they have no room. So me and my wife took him, and now we have this 6-7 month old running around with my dog around the house.
Oh,
and
man.
it's funny. My dog is 12 years old, my American Pit Bull Terrier, Ramsey, and this dog's got to be 6 or 7 months tops and is the same exact size. So this dog's going to be a 120-pound dog without question.
God bless your hearts, man, for taking in a stray dog. That's a beautiful thing.
But anyway, we have a special guest. Let me introduce him. Just in case any of you ever listen to the Jets Lounge, this is one of the co-hosts of the Jets Lounge. I hear him all the time. He's always in there. He's a strong force when the Jets Lounge was raided by Miami Dolphin fans. This is one of the guys that we can count on to like fend for us and not let anybody try to walk on top of us. If you don't know him, he's going to be somebody you know a lot better moving. You know, I know that everybody listener I have here eventually on Twitter goes into the Jets Lounge. Well, guess what? You're going to meet Paul Riley. That's his name. I'm going to bring him onto the show right now. Right now, he's not on camera. He's in a car driving. We're going to have his voice. When he gets home, we'll get to meet him more personal and see what he looks like. Everybody, Paul Riley. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Oh. Good. Thank you for having me. I'm going down Walnut Street. I'm at 58th Street, so I'm about 15 minutes from leaving Philadelphia and getting to my home in the suburbs. But I will be happy to talk to you until I get home, and then I'll put on a cap so you don't have to see my hair, and I'll join you on camera.
All right, sounds good. I have one quick question for you. I know that you're in leaving Philly and you live in the suburb of Philly. Can you tell me your favorite cheesesteak place?
You know, it's funny. It's a place you never heard of in the suburbs. Everyone knows about the two big Philadelphia, Pat and Gino's and stuff. In fact, people shoot each other sometimes arguing between the two in the parking lots. But I really, it's a small place in the suburbs near me. I'm not I don't eat out a lot in the city anymore. So it's a place near me. There's a lot of good places.
That's right.
Delisandro actually is the one in Philadelphia. If I had
Oh
to
my!
recommend one, it would be Delisandro.
Amen.
I can't believe you just named that one. My friend John lives in the Philly area, and I used to go out there, and he took me to all the places, and that's his favorite, and I loved it. I love Delisandro.
See, great minds think alike.
That's amazing.
Well, we're excited to have you on, Paul. Thanks for coming with us, man.
Oh, thank you very much. I enjoy this talking about football with people who are equally passionate, and I don't know that we'll agree, but it's okay.
No, absolutely. That's what makes it fun, is that you get different views and different thoughts and different ideas from different people, and we can go back and forth and bicker, and at the end of the day, we're still all Jets fans, and that's the important part. We all want the same thing.
Yep, we even have some Miami fans who join
Yeah.
us, and I am so behind in the chat. Let me welcome everybody to the show before we get started. We got J. Cole is the first one here, of course, ready to go. I'm sure he's talking a lot about food and eating a lot. Our regular Jacksonville Jaguar fan, Aiden Tobin, is here. Jacob Finnegan is here. Grandizer, our Miami fan friend, but loves to hear the other content providers and Jets fans talk, is here. He probably is a good guy to talk to about a lot of the different teams and who does the best shows and the best content for any team if you want to listen and find out what those fans are thinking. Gitmo Bob is here. Everybody, I want to again state how happy we are that Gitmo is fully recovering as far as we know. As far as he knows, things are really good and everything was successful. It's good to see him back. Nick Shine, my co-host for Friday nights, is in the chat. What's up, buddy? Anthony G is out there. Good to see you. And everybody's chatting along and getting started. So I just wanted to welcome everybody that's here so far. And Tom, tell us about your trip.
Oh, man, great trip. Spring break for the kids. Got down to D.C., watched the Mets blow out the Nationals. Saw an Alonso grand slam. My kid was psyched. He loves Pete Alonso. Spent a couple days in the amusement park, Six Flags down there in the Maryland, D.C. area. Spent some time in D.C., spent some time in the Inner Harbor, Maryland. Wonderful, wonderful trip. Happy to be home, though.
Nice. Yeah. So we're going to start out. We got a question in the chat already, something to warm us up before we get into the main part of the show. Well, I guess we'll take it one at a time. I'll take this one first. Would you mind if the Jets get Breece Hall? I'll always say first before anything, obviously it depends on which pick we use to get him. But if you're talking about a second round pick on Breece Hall, again, there's other tangibles too. Like what did we get in the first round? And, what positions did we already address? But overall, I'd be very happy if we got Breece Hall. I am sick and tired of being a team that relies on one player in a position. And if that person goes down, there's the season, or, we have to play at a horrible disadvantage. I love Michael Carter. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to evolve into a very good running back. But when you look at this offensive scheme and the way it's built to succeed, like the way it's supposed to be built, you can't be one injury away from then having a veteran who's never put up any numbers in his life. I mean, he might be decent, but you don't want Coleman carrying the team for 4 or 5 weeks. So I would say I would be very happy if we got Breece Hall. I think he and Kenneth Walker both, I think, have exciting, attributes and good things to say about them that give them the potential to be impact players. So what do you think about that, Dom?
Oh, man, I am a huge Breece Hall fan. He's definitely up there at the top of my running back board. Would I love to have him as a Jet? Absolutely, I would love to have him as a Jet. But I think, like you said, it depends on where and when and the situation that happened prior to. I think that running back is a sneaky need for the Jets. I envision us really supporting Zach Wilson a lot more this year by taking some of the stress off of him and utilizing that big foundation front line that we put in place, our offensive line, 2 tight end sets, 12 personnel, 22 personnel, and really pounding the rock. And if if LaFleur dovetails and our offense grows in the mindset of the true San Francisco Shanahan offense, I think running back depth is going to be of paramount importance. And Breece Hall, 5'11", 215 pounds, very, very light on his feet, amazing contact balance, falls forward on everything, can plant and cut, 4.4 speed. I mean, he's ideal. He's an ideal fit for the scheme. And like I said, I think running back is a sneaky, sneaky need for us. And I wouldn't be surprised if, we saw a running back come off the board in the first 3 rounds.
Yep. And Paul, how about you? Breece Hall, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course he'd be a good addition to the Jets. The problem I have is I don't see them drafting a running back early. I just don't see it. It doesn't fit. They look like they hit gold with Carter in the 4th round. That's the round I think they go for a running back.
Okay, and it does look like there'll be running backs in the 4th round because it is a deep draft.
You guys able to hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, we hear you great. It makes a lot of sense. In a lot of our mock drafts, we wait until the 4th round to draft a running back. There are guys that seem to slip in that area anyway, like Pierce, James Cook. I mean, there seems to be players that may very well be impact players as well that go down that far.
Yeah, I think the strength of the class is going to be anywhere from that, say 45 to 75 pick. That's where the meat and potatoes. That's where you're going to see a lot of these running backs come off the board. The Kenneth Walkers, the Breece Halls, James Robinson maybe a little later. Like you said, Dameon Pierce, who's one of my favorites in the class as well. James Cook, Tyler Algier. I mean, the list goes on and on. I think you're muted, Jeremy.
I was going to say, welcome to Clutch, a Kansas City Chief fan in the chat. Also, Nathan Colgrove has joined us, and Salty Nuts John Nolte is in the house. So, welcome, John Nolte. Okay, so that I think we're all kind of in the same place. We all really like and appreciate Breece Hall's ability, but it doesn't seem to be. It would be. I agree with what Paul said. It would be a surprise if we went 2nd round with that pick. It's not something I expect to see happen, but if it happens, we'd be happy if we had him. So looks like we lost Paul for a second. Okay, yeah, he's struggling to get on. He'll be home soon, so we're gonna have the full Paul Riley pretty soon. But it's only fitting that we have his voice because that's all you get in the Jets Lounge anyway. So let's see if there's any other questions before we get started. Okay, J. Cole has a point about we could wait for next year's draft to draft Bijan Robinson from Texas, the best running back prospect I've seen. And that's a good point, too. Like, we're not going to fill every single need that we want to fill, this year. It's only the 2nd year of the rebuild. So, I mean, there still might be some areas that we feel we need growth, and that we might push into year 3 of this. So maybe we do wait until, next year for a running back. Tom, do you think there's a chance that we're not going to draft a running back at all and wait till next year?
No, I mean, listen, anything could happen. Again, it's so dependent on what happens with the first 4 picks that we have in the top 40. If we keep all 4 of them, if JD decides to move up and down the board. But if I was a betting man, I'd say that we're going to add a piece in the backfield in this draft for sure.
Okay. And now we get to see you driving. Don't crash for this show, Paul. It's not worth it.
No, I'm literally turning onto my street, so I figured I would put the camera on and stay with you guys. I heard the talk about the running backs, and I just think if you follow what the Jets did last year, and Douglas comes from a place in Philadelphia where they never went running back real high. I wouldn't expect a running back to go in the first couple rounds.
Right, right. And Dom says, Dom, you think that in the fourth round there'll be some running backs there? Some of the ones that you like, will they go that far and last that long?
Listen, it wouldn't surprise me if the first running back off the board doesn't come until late in round 2. You know, just the value, the positional value, just isn't what it used to be in this day and age with a much more pass heavy oriented offensive schemes that the NFL runs. On top of that, the running back by committees. I mean, it's a rarity. I mean, we could probably count the teams on two hands that utilize a true, 3-down workhorse running back all the time. I mean, it's not many. So I think the positional value has kind of dipped. So if Breece Hall is the number one, and I know it's arguable, you can make the argument for him or Kenneth Walker or whomever it is. I think that middle to late round, second round is where we're going to see him. We could be surprised. Buffalo could decide, you know what? I'm sitting here at 25. All the cornerbacks are off the board. All the edges that I like are off the board. I'm going to go ahead and lock in my, running back now. I mean, Travis Etienne was a very big surprise last year to go in the first round. Najee Harris, not so much, but I think that you're going to see as the second round ends, we get into round 3 and round 4. That's when the running backs are going to start coming off the board. And as we touched on before, it is deep. It's not the strongest class in the world, but it's very deep in the sense that I think you'll get some good NFL players, some good NFL rotational pieces with these picks in the 3rd and 4th at running back. Yes.
Okay, and now and John Nolte makes the point, too much of a luxury for this year, target linebackers. So a lot of people feel that linebacker is a position we have to pick high in. That linebacker is a position we have to pick high in. I think the worry there is not so much about the fans. I think the fans, there's a consensus of, and the fans believe we need a linebacker, if not 2. I mean, but like we need to bulk up that position. But there's a lot of question about whether the Jets believe that. Does Joe Douglas think that? Do you think he's truly is comfortable with Sherwood coming back from an Achilles? That he believes Nasruddin is going to eventually develop into a starter for us? Does he believe that Quincy Williams is a guy who's going to grow and be a linebacker you could trust as a 3-back linebacker in all situations? I mean, what do you think the feeling is there? I mean, from the perspective of the Jets, is there a chance they really believe we're good at linebacker, or do you think that they're definitely thinking they need a new linebacker too in the draft?
So it's funny because everything that you see or you hear, when Saleh talks to it or whatnot, they seem and again, you have to take everything you hear right now with a grain of salt because you don't know if it's reality or if it's smoke that's being put out. But everything that I've seen sees that Saleh is very confident in the linebackers that we have here. I'm not saying that we're not going to take one, but he's made mention to it on many different occasions that he's comfortable with the linebackers that we have here on the team. I question it, but who am I to question JD? I mean, he seems to know a lot more than I do. That's for sure. But to the point on, saying that running back is a luxury, I agree and I disagree with that statement. I agree with that it's a luxury because I think that there's bigger or more pressing needs on our roster than maybe a running back. But on the same token, Michael Carter, as good as much as I like him, and I do, in year 1, he didn't stay healthy. We have Tevin Coleman, correct? What if Tevin Coleman's getting more than 80 carries a week? 80 carries a year, then there's probably some sort of an issue. I think that it's a position that is void of depth that is going to need to be addressed at some point. Our second round picks being where they are at the top of them, probably too high. I don't necessarily expect it to happen. But as we get into the 3rd round, the 4th round, like we said, the 5th round, I think that's the ideal area that we're going to see, and we're going to see JD come off the board and target some more depth. They like to keep everyone fresh. We talk about, the rotation, the eight-man rotation on the defensive line. He wants people in there, in and out fresh. It's the same thing with the running backs. Look what happened in San Francisco. I mean, how many running backs did they have that, played an intricate part of that offense over the past couple years on different times? There was never one true workhorse throughout the whole season. There might be a workhorse for a game. There might be a guy that gets 15, 16, 20 carries in a game. And then the next game, they're back to split 3 carries, 8 carries, 12 carries, so on and so forth. So I think that it's a position that lacks depth, but in fairness, it's probably lower on the pecking order than some of the other positions that we really need to address. Running backs are, like I said, the evaluation of the running backs is so prominent in the NFL now. You can get these guys. You pluck one in the 3rd or 4th round, you burn through their 4-year contract, and you rinse and repeat, and then take another running back in the 3rd, 4th round. Get the wear and tear out of them, rinse and repeat. That's what outside of the true unicorns that you find, like the Derrick Henrys or the kid out of the Indianapolis, these true stalwarts, these true 3-down running backs who have a presence and make a presence on the field year in and year out. They're a dime a dozen. They're not a dime a dozen. They're the unicorns of the matter. It's more so you see these guys rotating in and out. New guys coming in 3-4 years later, another new guy. This guy goes to this team, another 3-4 years, he's gone, so on and so forth. So it's a constant revolving door at the running back position, but one that I think we need to that we're going to need to address at some point, because as much as Michael Carter, produced, and he did, he was wonderful. I'm not sold that he's our every down 3-down running back. I don't want it. If we give Michael Carter, 250, 300 carries a year, that's scary. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah. So, Paul, what do you think about picking a running back later in the 4th, 5th round? I think you suggested that. And how do you feel about linebackers? And what do you feel about linebackers, Paul? Do you think we're set, or do we need help in that position?
No, see, I'm one of those people who think linebacker should be picked in the 2nd round. I mean, I think that the inherent weakness of the linebackers are twofold. Number one, you've got Quincy Williams played fine. All right. He played fine, but he was cut for a reason. He hits like a truck, but he has some deficiencies. And Quinnen Williams, the fact that they chose not to extend Quinnen Williams to reduce that cap hit this year tells me he's on life support with the Jets, that they're not going to keep him next year. And they're certainly not at that cap number, and maybe not at all. So I think you need to have a ready replacement for him. And I don't know that you can find that player in the 4th round. I'm one of those people that believes the Jets' 2nd round picks, barring something unusual, one of those two will be a linebacker. That's my opinion.
So to that point, Paul, is there a specific guy that you think, are you talking about, like, all right, so we pick at 35 and 38, very, very high picks, right? Do you think, are you thinking more along the lines of, hey, maybe a Nakobe Dean kind of drops down because people are, concerned about his size or so on and so forth, and we pluck a guy that should have been in the 1st round? Or is there a guy that you think, is probably 2nd, 3rd round talent that we're going to go ahead and reach and grab at that spot because of the inherent need that we have there?
I think both. I think you're always on the lookout for look what happened with Moore. I mean, they were going to take Moore. I don't think anyone disputes this. They were going to take Moore 23rd last year. Yeah. But they traded up for Vera Tucker. And then they just said, well, we lost Moore. Well, they didn't, because he fell. Could Dean be that player? Yeah, maybe. I find it hard to believe he gets past the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to take him with one of those 2 picks. But if he does, yes, that's certainly a player you'd take at 35. If not, maybe you go a little early for the guy from Wyoming. Maybe, he isn't the top of the second round pick, but my view on that is this. If that's the guy you like, you take him. Because if you say, hey, I'll wait till the third round, and then he's wearing a uniform of the Washington Redskins or, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whomever, you're going to kick yourself because, he went earlier. You would have taken him a little earlier than another team would because that's because you like him. That's who you want. You want him. So I think the Jets are going to take one of the top maybe 6, 7 linebackers that are in this draft. And I think they're going to take him in the second round. I just think it's a big hole that not just for this year.
I agree with you. And more so, I'm even thinking, I'm thinking about this year, but I'm thinking about what happens with CJ Mosley next year. I mean, the writing's on the wall to me that, we're going to be out of his contract next year, or at least we can get out of his contract almost scot-free. I think there'd be $1.5 million in dead cap money if we cut him after the season.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's why when they didn't extend him, he would have been the keep easy player to cut his cap hit from $16 million this year to half of that, maybe less, by extending him 3 years, giving him more guaranteed money, but just spreading it out over 3 years. Douglas's decision not to do that tells me he wants the option to say goodbye to him after this year.
Well, he's going to be 32. I mean, he's probably at that point where, and could he have another 2 productive years? Absolutely. I mean, I didn't expect what he provided to us last year. I mean, I remember at this time last year, all Jets Twitter was a buzz of, should we cut him now? Should we trade him for a third rounder? So on and so forth. You know what I mean? So I didn't, he surpassed my expectations on what he did on the field last year, but to hang that hat on him and expect that production for the next 3 years, I'm with you. I don't know if we can do that. And obviously JD doesn't either, because I agree with you. If that was the case, he would have been extended. His cap hit would have been cut in half, and we'd be talking about CJ Mosley in the middle of the defense for the next 3-4 years.
And I would love I would love it if Nakobe Dean slipped to the second round. I think that would be a gift, something we would all celebrate. And you run to the podium and you grab him. If not, I have no problem. I don't think it's too early to go for a Muma or a Christian Harris. I agree with you guys. We need our future linebacker. We got it, and we don't know what's going to happen with CJ Mosley. And even if CJ Mosley hung around, it wouldn't be a horrible thing to have another really high quality, reliable linebacker at his side, and have them both playing together. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's an easy thing to see is that we need to bring in a guy. I don't trust a guy coming off an Achilles that wasn't very productive before he got hurt to begin with. So, there was, I know they liked Sherwood a lot, but I don't know. Gitmo Bob comes in and says, what do you think of the announcers in the Jets? So Gitmo Bob, just to let you guys know, he rewatched the Jets Bengals game, and he noticed that the announcers during the Bengals game said that Becton was out for the season, although that's not what we were being told by Saleh or JD. We were still being told at that time there was a good chance he was going to be back. We were still expecting him to be back. Do you think it was an accident that the announcers said that and they were just under that impression and made that assumption? Or do you think they knew something and they knew something at the time? Now, I know I can't wait to hear Paul, because I know what he did for a living before he retired. And sometimes I can imagine you saying there's no such thing as a coincidence or a mistake like that. I'm wondering what you think. Becton, do you think that the Jets let it slip somehow to the announcers when they didn't intend to?
I don't personally.
I mean, personally, they run a very tight ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I doubt. To me, I think that was just somebody speculating. Because I was at that. I go to all the games, and relatively early in the year, as Mike White, played the games live. I don't dead with kind of level of that Beckham would have been out for the season. I think that's one of those things where guys said it, and it turned out he was right. But I don't know that the Jets knew that or felt that then. I think they were probably kept hoping he would come back, and I do think they reached a point where they said, "Why bother?" You know, well, if he's not 100% and he's overweight now, why do this? To show what end? What gain? Does it help him? Does it help us? So I kind of was speculating, and they were right.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of felt that way as well. I didn't. I Part of me was thinking, is there a reason to rush him back? It's like maybe if we were in the playoff hunt or we were a Super Bowl contender, he's pushing to get back as soon as possible. But do you take that kind of risk when you have Fant was playing really well? Our offensive line was coming together, playing a little bit better. It's like we had Mosley at the time. It's kind of like risk versus reward.
Yeah. And I think Paul makes a good point. Well, we got to remember the guy's 370 pounds, right? So to get somebody back in game shape is going to take some time. To get a guy who's that big back in game shape, I mean, the risk of re-injury is so much higher than the reward of having him back on the field. For what? Would Mekhi Becton have gotten us 2 more wins? 3 more wins? Probably not. And that's no disrespect to the player himself. I love him. But I think that I think the writing was on the wall once we hit midseason that we're gonna play these new kids. We're gonna see what happens, and we're gonna pick up the pieces and get into next season with all this capital. With now all these young guys who have the experience, who cut their teeth, and let's get him healthy so that we can start over or get back, get him back healthy. I just don't see. I never saw the point after week 8. I never saw the point of him coming back. You know what I mean? And Jeremy, like you said, if we were in playoff contention, maybe it's a different story. Maybe he is healthy enough that you push him and give him a couple weeks and get him back on the field. But that wasn't our situation.
Yep. So some guys are agreeing with what you said about running back. They're a little behind in the chat, or were behind getting to the chat. They were agreeing with not wearing down a running back so much. But I do want to welcome you guys to the chat. Scott Wilson, welcome to the chat. And Clutch is here. And man, everybody's coming in, man. It's Easter Sunday. I didn't know if a lot of people would make it, but they're starting to pile in. Nick Rousseau is here. He's already talking about his picks. We're going to get to that. Dark Soldier's here. And just in case you guys don't know, Paul Riley is one of the co-hosts in the Jets Lounge. He's one of the common voices and people you see in there. He's helped make it a great hangout on Twitter for Jet fans to go. And Paul, how's that been, by the way? Like, are you enjoying the Jets Lounge and doing all that stuff? He's a little on delay. So
yeah, did we lose him?
Really, Jeff fans that waves the pom poms and says every grade and agrees with everybody. So I think that's one of the reasons they like me to do that, because not that I'm negative. In fact, I'm very positive about what I saw last year. I'd like to think I'm realistic. And, occasionally someone on that show will say something that makes me want to blow my brains out. And I just can't. I don't suffer fools real well. So I'll say something I probably shouldn't. But it's been fun. And they put me, they like me to cross-examine sometimes somebody when I'll give you an example. And I'm not going to say who the person is because I like them. Somebody just casually threw out one of the guests, and I was just in my spot being nice and quiet, and he just casually said, well, William to be ready from his ACL for training camp. Stop. Do you know when he was operated on? Of course, the guy didn't know. And I said, trainings from now. The earliest player in the history of football with an ACL injury, Adrian Peterson. That's wrong. It's Amari Rogers. Amari Rogers said in 90 days for this surgery, he will be the fast. So I think because I'm like an idiot savant. I don't know much about certain facts. So yes, to answer your question, and we have good conversations. For the most part, I think people get along. So it's been good.
Cool. Yeah, guys, if you are on Twitter and you haven't had a chance to go in there and check out the Jet Lounge, I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not. I mean, it's wonderful. The banter, the in-depth knowledge of everyone in there, especially the guests, Paul and everyone who kind of runs a tight ship. It's just fabulous, And if you're, a content nerd like myself, I mean, I'm in there all the time, quietly listening, doing some work at the office, have it on the speaker. Do yourself a favor and get in there and show some love to those guys. I mean, it's the real deal, man.
Absolutely. It's good stuff, man. It's gonna get me trouble at work sometimes, though, because sometimes I get a little addicted to it. What's up, Big Crean?
My show is Wednesday night. They asked me to do a show with Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say that you're doing a show when?
I lost him.
Yeah, Paul, it might help to shut the video off because your connection's bad and just voice. I don't know if that will fix it, but we're having trouble hearing you. It's chopping in and out, so you might want to give that a shot. And I guess we are going to go to the segment of the show that.
Night is the show from
we can't hear you, Paul.
Try shutting the camera off and seeing if it's easier if you just using voice over internet. I'm wondering if that'll work. But anyway, we are going to move along to the draft. And what you had a great idea, Dom. You wanted to talk about our best case and worst case scenarios.
Yeah, so we've been mocking, we've been doing the dueling mock for a while, and by this point, if the guys and girls in the chat, have been coming around on Sunday nights, I'm sure they kind of got a feel on the guys that you like, the guys that I like, where we would pick them, so on and so forth. For someone who's as big of a draft junkie as I am, I'm even at this point starting to get a little mocked out. So why not just switch it up and let's say, hey, let's talk about scenarios, man. Let's talk about best case scenario at 4. Let's talk about worst case scenario at 4, best case at 10, worst case at 10. And kind of, dovetail off each other. And Paul, if he gets back on as well with that.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's say let's fast forward 11 days from now.
Mm-hmm.
It's draft night. Jets come up to the podium at number 4. Best case scenario, assuming they're on the board. I don't know if you want to assume that like someone like Hutchinson is off the board. Like I have certain rules. Like in my mind, I pretend Hutchinson's not going to be there, so I don't consider that as a scenario.
Well, that would be your best case scenario if Hutchinson's there, then, right? Now, listen, best case scenario for me at 4. My best case scenario, I don't think I'm unique in this, but I think we need to really secure our edge. We need somebody who to play the weak side opposite of Carl Lawson. We need somebody that can play in lieu of Carl Lawson coming back from a very serious Achilles injury, isn't, up to par or ready or full go or 100%, or if he struggles a little bit. I think it would be foolish to say that. Nah, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say foolish. That's a bad word. I think it would be wise. The wise selection would be to secure that edge at 4. That's my best case scenario, is that 1, 2, 3 goes, however the board falls. Offensive tackle, quarterback Hutchinson. Say 1, 2, 3 in whatever order you want to put it, and we get our pick of the litter. And that pick of the litter for me is still Kayvon Thibodeaux. I am staying strong with the fact that I think Kayvon Thibodeaux is the best edge rusher in this class. I like the production that he's put on the field. He's a very cerebral athlete. He's, maybe he's not the bendiest, and there's guys that are bendy and so on and so forth, but I think he's cerebral enough. He comes with a plan of attack. He's going to be very, very good against the run. And he gets after the passer and he produces. You know what I mean? He gets after the quarterback and produces. So my best case scenario, if he's on the board, is going to be Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, I'm also of the belief that I think Kayvon Thibodeaux could be off the board by 4. In that case, depending how the board falls, I'm okay. I'm one of the few probably that are okay. Selecting our next best available edge at 4, and I think that, again, we're talking a situation where Hutchinson's off the board and Kayvon Thibodeaux is off the board. I take Jermaine Johnson at number 4, and not have any concerns or questions about it. His floor is very high. His ceiling might not be as high as that of Hutchinson's or Kayvon Thibodeaux's, but the production that he'll put through, he's a great hand fighter. Strong at the point of attack, can handle the rush. I'm comfortable with Jermaine Johnson if Kayvon Thibodeaux is off the board. So my best case scenario at pick 4 is we secure our weak side edge opposite Carl Lawson for the next 10 years.
Okay. My best case scenario is, I'll make it short and sweet. Thibodeaux or Hutchinson, I'm fine with. I'm happy with. That's my best case scenario. I could live with and tolerate a different edge if they picked at 4, and just trust Joe Douglas and trust that they know what they're doing. But I'm not going to feel great about it. So my best case scenario is Thibodeaux or Hutchinson, and that's it. Anything beneath that with edge, I definitely want it to be an edge, but anything below that is not going to be what I would call a best case scenario or anywhere near it. But so I'll just sit it and rest it at that. How about you, Paul?
Well, I think we're in agreement. I think Thibodeaux, Hutchinson, I don't think there's any scenario where he's sitting there, but Thibodeaux, I would certainly, that would be my best case scenario. But I'm sure more in line with you, Jeremy. That is my only best case scenario at 4. I would not take Jermaine Johnson at all at 4. Probably not even at 10. So I mean, that the best case scenario is Thibodeaux, and then after that we go to the worst case scenario.
Okay, so to that, and that's a good transition there. So to that point, guys, I'll pose this to both of you. Hutchinson's off the board at 1. Kayvon Thibodeaux comes off the board at 2, and tackle number 1 comes off the board at 3. What are you doing at 4? And I don't care. For argument's sake, for this thing, we'll say Ike Ekwonu comes off the board at 3. What are you guys doing at 4?
Well, I personally would then very much be open to looking at what the offers are. If there is someone looking to trade up and get above Carolina for a quarterback, like now I would very much consider an offer like that. And I understand that we can't force that situation. There has to be a shopper. There has to be somebody coming in wanting to make a trade and a deal like that. With Thibodeau on the board, I barely pick up the phone. I mean, we need the edge, and I'm not going to get talked out of taking my edge. I'm not interested in trading down that pick. With Thibodeau and Hutchinson off the board, suddenly I'm willing to answer the phone. I'm willing to hear what the offers are. I don't want to go down too far, but I'm willing to drop down a little bit to let somebody sneak in to get their quarterback, and then maybe get somebody of value at pick 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, wherever it is, 9 if it's Seattle, and in that spot, if there's a guy like Sauce Gardner or Hamilton or even grabbing Jameson Williams at that point at 9 or whatever wide receiver is your first choice, that's the kind of scenario I'm imagining what I would want to see if those guys were off the board.
But the $1 million question to that is you have to have 2 to tango, right? You're working on the assumption trade down if Thibodeau and Hutch are off the board, but what if nobody wants to come up to get the quarterback? Because listen, let's call a spade a spade. The quarterbacks are they're not of the elite talent that we've had in the past couple years, right? And there's plenty of situations, there's plenty of scenarios where we could see, the first quarterback not taken until, say maybe, 9, 10, 15, somewhere along those lines. Christ, maybe even the first quarterback doesn't come off the board until Pittsburgh picks at 20. Probably highly unlikely, but in this year it wouldn't be that completely outlandish. At least that's how I feel when I look through this class up and down.
I mean, if I'm forced in that scenario where we have to make a pick at 4, I'm not going to reach for that position. I'm going to go for a different position. If JD is a Hamilton guy, I would live with Hamilton. I would live, even though I don't feel like the cornerback is the biggest position in need. I think Sauce Gardner is a once in a lifetime opportunity or a very rare opportunity to get a shutdown corner. I would rather do that than reach for a Jermaine Johnson or somebody that, even a Karlaftis, who I wouldn't mind at 10. I would rather not reach and just grab the best at a position in that scenario if there was no way to trade it. But I'll pass it on to Paul.
Well, I'll agree with what you said. I'm presuming the first 3 picks, as I'm sitting here tonight, hopefully with some light in me, it's going to be Hutchinson, Thibodeau, and I think Ekwonu is going to go to Houston. I think Ekwonu is going to go to Houston for 2 reasons. They want to protect a quarterback who's had a history of knee trouble, Mills, in college. They want to actually not have the worst running game in the entire NFL, and I put themselves leaves or not. I would consider that. If you look at Seattle, look at San Francisco, you will not find that they invested in high round cornerbacks. So with that being said, I would take Trayvon Walker.
Okay. See, and
that's me.
And I hear what you're saying. You just happen, and this is where we differ in regards to your value on Walker to Jermaine Johnson as mine do. In essence, what you're saying is you're taking your next best edge in this case scenario, and that's exactly what I said. However, our edges just seem to be different. I'm Trayvon Walker. He's an enigma. He's the talent. He's talented. I see a lot more athlete than I do true, ready to go edge. And I think personally, I just think Jermaine Johnson's a little bit more plug and play ready to go right now. Again, the ceiling on Trayvon Walker might be a lot higher than it is on Jermaine Johnson, but I think the floor on Jermaine Johnson's a lot higher than Trayvon Walker. But to each their own.
Okay. So I think now we have our best
I'll tell you
case.
what my problem with Jermaine Johnson, and if they draft him, God hope he plays. A few things. No, I just said Walker to me was, if you really look at the details, when he was in the SEC, Georgia, they got 6. And let's not kid ourselves. he looked because of Trayvon Walker. And he went to 11, 12, which looks great on paper. He gets 6, a bad man team, and those Giants from Jacksonville State. So, and he's 23 years old. So he was productive last year. The old fool would say he's not productive. Big game against 2 opponents. The name that jumps out at me is Vernon Golston, and I that would worry me about Jermaine Johnson. And one could say, well, Walker was, equally as productive in the SEC. But I think if you ask the Georgia coaches who they would prefer, they preferred Walker. And I'm going to trust their judgment in this one. So, but you and I are basically on the same page. We would take an edge. Now, I'm sorry, yes. Jeremy, I cut you off. What were your topic you're on to address?
No, I think no, that was great. I think we completed that, but we need to go in to worst case scenario. And Tom, did you want to start that? Like, what's your?
Well, I think my worst case scenario was already touched on, that we see Hutchinson, Thibodeau, and then Ike Ekwonu come off the board 1, 2, 3 with no one really itching or looking to come up into 4. Listen, if a team's going to trade up or want to trade up and get ahead of Carolina, I'm telling you what. I mean, let's think realistically about this. The call is going to be made to the Giants, right? If nothing more, it's going to cost less capital to come up to 5 than it is to 4, if nothing more than that, right? And I know that, the banter out there is that both, JD and Schoen over there in on the other side for the Giants are waiting by the phone and willing to listen to any offers that come up. Giants having 2 picks at 5 and 7 makes them I think a much easier trade partner for someone who wants to get ahead of Carolina. And again, that's the big question is if there's someone that wants to get ahead of Carolina. Outside of that, that's my worst case scenario, is that's how the board falls to start, and then we're stuck when we stick and pick, and we go with probably the next best scenario. Like I said, edge would be the pick for me, and I'd be comfortable with the Jermaine Johnson, even if it's Trayvon Walker. He might not be my favorite in the pecking order. But my worst case scenario is that we see Hutchinson, Thibodeau come off the board 1, 2, and there's no one there that wants to trade back with us at 3 or
right.
4.
Well, I think we all agree with that. That's a nightmare situation. If obviously that's the situation that's going to hurt if nobody wants to come up. I think it's possible that, we need 2 teams to really care about quarterback. And you need a team that is going to, like, if you say, well, why would a team just not deal with the Giants? If there are 2 teams, they don't want to deal with the Giants because whatever team they're competing with deals with us, right? And then somebody deals with the Giants and then gets screwed and doesn't get, their guy anyway. To me, I just hope that if Thibodeau and Hutchinson are off the board, I hope there's a really good trade partner out there. I mean, but you're right. So the worst case scenario is just being in the scenario where we're forced to pick somebody in that pick, and it's not Thibodeau or Hutchinson.
Well, listen, and we don't know how really the Jet staff rates these guys. I've read a ton this week how interested and how much they're into Jermaine Johnson. I've heard the same thing about Evan Neal. That they really like Evan Neal. I personally wouldn't want to see an offensive lineman taken at 4. However, if you take a guy like Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, I get it. It makes sense. I mean, if they're the best on the board and there's nothing more that you can do, they're going to be great players. They're going to be great, talented, players. I just don't know if I can stomach another year of super high capital spent into an offensive line where, as it stands right now, they've really worked on and solidified through, free agent additions and guys like the George Fant really stepping up their game. You know what I mean? I think there has to be a play for 23, what happens? Are we going to re-sign George Fant? Do we let him walk? Connor McGovern is in his contract year, so there's going to be some holes. I mean, I think offensive line again is another spot that we're going to need to add some depth, especially like I said with Fant on his contract year, McGovern in his contract year, Chuma Edoga, who's been serviceable as a swing tackle fill-in, also on his contract year. So it's going to be addressed. I just don't want to see it addressed at 4. That's my feelings.
Yep. How about you, Paul?
Do we lose him again?
There's a little bit of a delay. We may have lost them. So, Paul, one of the things, again, if you shut your camera off, you might have enough bandwidth to not get interrupted or have your audio be choppy. So if you want to try that, that might be a good move. Yeah, we lost them. Lance Dominguez says, can never have enough O linemen. Yeah, I agree that you can never have enough O linemen, but it would be very painful if we have to use a number 4 pick. And if somebody got hurt, it would be amazing that we had that depth and we brought that person in. If no one gets hurt, then I feel really cheated because I feel like we get a guy like Neal or Icky, and they're sitting on the bench or somebody's sitting on the bench, and I don't feel like we upgraded the team enough considering it's a number 4 pick. So that's my issue with it. I have no issue with the players that we'd be able to get it for as far as the offensive line is concerned. My issue is you're going to use a number 4 pick and have that kind of draft capital and end up, at least for a year, you're sitting someone on the bench and you have not improved the club that much, except for the fact that if you have an injury, then you wipe your head and say, well lucky we did that. Without an injury, it's agonizing that to have, some very able and capable tackle just sitting on the bench. And with your number 4 pick, you didn't make your team any better.
I think with these 2 tackles in particular, and you can add Charles Cross into the mix because, he's a very, very good tackle in his own right. I think that they would be, it would, to this point exactly that you just put up here. Think that. To this point you just put up here, if they do go tackle, I think it's very telling on how the organization really feels about the future of Mekhi Becton. And again, being the optimist that I am, I don't want. I want to think that Mekhi Becton's my tackle, whether it's on the left side or the right side, I don't care, but he's my tackle for the next 10 years. You know what I mean? I believe in the talent.
Paul, are you trying to talk?
Yeah, I think I cut off Paul. And also to the point that you can never have. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
See, I don't. I got cut off. I'm sorry. I'm cutting in and out. This isn't the best service here. But Kwanu or Neal, I think they will trade.
I think he's saying they would trade George Fant probably.
Okay, I'm sorry. I said that if I don't think that happens. I think they roll those dice situation where Fant, Becton, and Neal, or Fant, Becton, and they're going to $1 back in Fant, going to have a value picked in the first round 2 years before for a third round pick. Just move on.
Okay, I think he's saying they would trade even like a third round pick. So, hey, Paul, try if you hear me, try shutting your camera off and seeing if you have the bandwidth to just do your voice like you were in the car, because it'd be easier to hear you. Um, yeah, I mean, Lance is making the point that we would have our tackle for the entire for a decade, and that's true. So, I think it would make sense in that situation to trade Fant. What do you think about trading Fant for like a third round pick or some pick like that if we were in that situation?
Listen, I think if our hand is forced, go ahead, Paul. If you got to take it.
Well, I'll tell you, this is why next week, by next week, I'm going to do everything I can to get it ready. I'm going to do a Google phone number for and learn how to get it into this show, so people can call in this situation, because, and we're going to have Paul back on, because we're missing valuable input, because I listen to Paul all the time on Jets Lounge, and he has tremendous things to say. So we need to get him back in a situation where we could hear him. And I think that Google phone might be the best way to accomplish that, because he can call in with a regular phone. But until then, we'll see if we are able to get him back, and we'll move forward. So we have so I just want to like finish up that point and just ask Dom, how would you feel about that last situation where, what if we picked Evan Neal or Aquanu and we traded Fant for a second or third round pick to somebody else? We avoid having to pay him, and we secure the offensive line with a young guy for a good 5 years and beyond.
Again, if the scenario comes down the pike that way, sure, if we're we're in a stick and pick situation, and offensive line is our best, is our top dog on the board, then you get him, and then you got to really play Russian roulette on to say, okay, who's gonna net us the most value? George Fant, Connor McGovern. Can one, if we get rid of McGovern, can one of these guys slide over into the middle and handle the pivot at center? Probably not. I don't know. What can Fant really get you at $10 million? A $10 million contract. Can he get you a third rounder? Maybe it's a fourth rounder. Maybe at that point you get what you can. So yeah, no, I wouldn't be. It's not ideal for me. I wouldn't, necessarily see it, especially since I think, stability is, the stability that George Fant could offer, anchor in our offensive line, is worth much more than a fourth round pick. But stick and pick case scenario, we have to take an offensive line. Yeah, we're going to trade, and we're going to have to get rid of one. George Fant would probably be the guy that we'd look to get rid of. Excuse me.
Okay. Hey, Paul, try now. Let's see if we can get you now.
I'm trying to do one more time.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
We
can.
Okay, good. I'm sorry we're having such bad. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm actually walking outside to get better reception here. I don't know how much you heard what I said. I think Fant is gone if they draft Aquanu or Neal. I don't think Fant survives because they're not giving up on Becton. They're going to roll the dice. He's healthy, and they're going to not have Fant be a $9 million backup for a year when they can get something for him now. And they will get something for him now, and it'll be at least a third round pick.
So Paul, do you think, to my point that I said earlier, if one of the tackles, Aquanu or Neal or Cross, were to be the pick at 4, do you think that it's kind of telling on what the organization feels about Mekhi Becton, or do you think that no, it's not the case? Mekhi Becton's staying, or in essence, are you feeling any of the smoke that's being thrown about and the pressure that's being put on him, Mekhi Becton, and all this trade banter about him?
No, not at all. I mean, if you look at his contract, they've got him for 2 more years, and it's guaranteed money. I think they are just going to commit themselves to making sure he's healthy. And if this will be the telltale year, if he survives the season and he plays, that's great. If not, they at least have one really good tackle long term. I think Ekwonu might be the player number one on their board. just in terms of how you grade people, it wouldn't surprise me if he was number one. But the thing
he's a fabulous fit for the offense. I mean, he's picture perfect. Picture perfect.
He's a great player. He's a great player, and I think but I just think Fan goes. And it's funny. People, they have a tendency. I call it recency bias. Fan played really well last year. George Fan hasn't exactly been the Iron Man. He's never played 16 games in an NFL season. He has torn an ACL. He's had a lot of injuries in Seattle. And I'm not talking poorly against the man. I'm just saying from a practical standpoint, I saw a line the other day. I mean, he didn't become Jonathan Ogden overnight either. He's a good player. And if he's the Jets starting tackle, they're better for it. But he's the one they move on from. I think if they drafted Ekwonu, it doesn't say anything other than they are really gambling that Mekhi Becton is healthy because they're planning on starting him. And I think they'll start him at left tackle. All the stuff about him moving to right tackle, I disagree with. I think he will be the left tackle, and Ekwonu would be the right tackle in that scenario. And Fanson, I don't know, pick a scene. Phoenix. Fans on another roster.
So does Ekwonu's deficiencies in pass pro worry you at all? Yeah, and again, I agree with you. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think he's got that mentality that I think you really want to have in an offensive lineman. He's sturdy from the hips down. He's big. He's strong as an ox. He can get into the second level without problem. If there's any downside to him, he might not be as in tune at pass pro, and which is why I think a lot of people liken him to probably move inside at the next level, where I think he can suffice as very well on the outside as a right tackle.
Oh yeah, no, I think he'll play right tackle. Somebody asked me today on Twitter, well, why would they draft the guy at 4 and have him play right tackle? And I said the same reason the Philadelphia Eagles drafted Lane Johnson 4th overall when they had Jason Peters, because they were confident he could play right tackle.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, they were right, and he played it so well, they determined not to move him to left tackle when they got rid of Peters. I just think, I'm starting to really believe that they will draft Ekwonu if he's there. I do. I didn't for a long time. I do now. But again, that scenario where Hutchinson and Thibodeau are off the board, and somehow Houston does something like draft Sauce Gardner, which I don't think is possible. Before I got cut off, you guys were talking about something. I just wanted to chip in. I don't believe any team's trading up for a quarterback up there. No, I think a team would trade up for Sauce Gardner. I think a team might trade up for Neal. So if the Jets are sitting at 4 and Hutchinson, Thibodeau, and Ekwonu just went 1, 2, 3, if they were to trade down, I don't think it would be for a team looking for a quarterback. I think it would be a team who really wants Sauce Gardner or Evan Neal. I can see that.
I could see that. I could see that more so, especially with Neal, because of the just the positional value that left tackle offers, and him being a phenomenal player, a phenomenal talent. And again, it's no disrespect to Sauce Gardner. I think he's wonderful. However, I think he's much more. If you look at the teams that could trade up for, that would want to trade up for a Sauce Gardner. Atlanta is in shambles. They're in complete rebuild. They could use another cornerback opposite. Oh my God, the kid from Clemson that they have there. I can't think of his name's, skipping me right now. Seattle, again, somebody who's heavily mocked or could be in the market for cornerback, I don't think that they're going to move up. I think they're one of the teams that probably is looking to move back. Maybe a Washington, but I could see a lot more teams really moving up for for Evan Neal, I should say. Carolina. Listen, maybe the Giants. I mean, the Giants have the offensive line is of paramount importance to them. Maybe they say, hey, you know what? Let's, here's a fourth round, here's a third round pick, Jets. Here's a fourth round pick. Swap spots with us. Let us move up into 4 and take Evan Neal. New Orleans, even though I don't think that they made that trade for the second first rounder to utilize it to move up. I think they're in win now mode. So I think they're sitting pretty at 16-19. I don't see them moving, but if they would move up, it would have to be to secure, a tackle, someone to replace Teron Armstead, more so than moving up for Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett. No way. I don't see that happening.
I agree with you 100% on New Orleans. People were yelling at me that, they're going to draft a quarterback. No, they aren't. They gave Jameis Winston $28 million. Yeah. They are built to win now because cap hell has already started for them. They're getting chipped away the last 3 years. They lost Hendrickson, Armstead, and Williams the last 2 years. They're going to lose more next year. They're built to win now. They made that trade to get 2 players, one to replace Armstead and one to contribute on defense, and they like where that fell in the middle of the draft. Yeah. They're not going after a quarterback. That was always, the casual fan, well, they're going to get a quarterback now. No, they're not. They never were. If anything, I think they wanted to get above the Chargers to, in case Charles Cross falls, or maybe they like Trevor Penning that much. They wanted to get, that, I think, wide receiver and offensive line, preferably offensive tackle, is what New Orleans is honing in on when they decided to move up and to take 16-19.
Yeah, it would be perfectly understandable for them to want 2 players in that part of the draft. I know people say usually you make that kind of trade when you want to set yourself up to trade up, and that's a possibility. But it's also understandable for them, like Paul said, if they're in a win now kind of mindset, that they want that extra pick, that there's 2 guys they love there. They think a guy like Cross will drop, or maybe they like Penning, just a tackle that they're in love with. And also the ability with another pick right there to draft another big impact player. Maybe that's their thinking, and that gives them, in their mind, the best chance to win now before that cap hell thing hits, because it's going to hit. One of the hardest things for me to understand, not that I don't think he's a good player, but to sign Marcus May to a 3-year, $27-28 million contract after blowing out his Achilles, that kind of, does anybody have any take on that? Because that kind of shocked me.
That was insanity for another reason. Marcus May is not only going to be 29, coming off a very serious injury. I mean, I know the stats on Achilles recovery. I've looked that up. I mean, it's 50% he'll be the player he once was, maybe a little higher. Marcus May's looking at a massive suspension, and I'll tell you why. I'm a lawyer, and I know what the law says in Florida for what he did. He declined to give a blood sample. That's per se evidence that he was drunk. He left the scene where someone was injured. Putting aside his criminal case, which is probably going to result in a conviction given his refusal to take blood, the NFL, if you look at their suspensions, they use the previous. You can almost figure out how long they'll suspend somebody. And ironically, the guy whose case is going to affect him is Chris Herndon. Herndon got 4 games for leaving the scene of an accident where someone was injured when he was drunk. Now add another factor in. Under the CBA, May was absolutely required to inform the NFL and the Jets that he'd been arrested. He didn't do it. And he didn't do it because he was trying to get a contract out of the Jets. And it only leaked because someone who knew something about football was looking at a docket in a Florida courtroom and saw his name. The NFL is going to add on a couple of games for that little maneuver. So I think he's going to be suspended a minimum of 6 games. So I was perplexed.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just perplexed that New Orleans gave him that. I couldn't believe it. I thought I read it wrong.
So,
I'm sure.
so Paul, let me lean on your legal background here. What kind of stipulation could New Orleans have put in the contract, in lieu of a possible suspension and or penalties he may face for these charges that haven't been doled out yet?
Well, I don't. Here's what I think that they could do. They could get cute. They could, if he gets suspended, they could put him on the physically unable to perform list for those first 6 weeks, which will, be concurrent with a suspension. So then he's not getting paid anyway, and he can't play anyway. That's one thing I think they could have done. But I looked at the contract to the extent I could read the public part of it. And I don't see that they protected themselves in any way. But remember, if he's suspended by the league, he doesn't get paid. So, at the very least, they're not going to have to pay him for 4 to 6 weeks. I don't see any way he gets less than Herndon. And I do think there'll be the little add-on. How the league lets him get away with that. He absolutely had an obligation. It's right in the CBA, and he didn't do it. And that's what pissed me off about Marcus May. We all thought what a great leader. Marcus May hid that from the Jets for a real specific reason. He was trying to get a contract out of them, and he knew that wasn't going to help his situation, so he didn't tell anybody. And I tell you right now, I think he would never have told anyone until he put his name on a dotted line somewhere. He just got outed by that reporter in Florida. He didn't tell anybody. I mean, the facts of that case are egregious. He's vomiting all over himself. He's reeking of alcohol. I mean, he's going to be convicted. So, he knew it, and he lied. Well, I see the lie. When you don't tell someone something, I guess that's not a lie, but it kind of is. So I'm not a big fan of how Marcus May handled himself there, and I'm glad the Jets moved on for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I think it made Joe Douglas look very smart when everybody was screaming about why we didn't extend them. You go back 12 months ago, and it was like, well, first of all, we had control over him for 3 years for 32 million, 33 million if we did the franchise and then the next year franchise. And when you do the math from how much money he wanted, it was only a lose-lose for the Jets, like from a business perspective, because like, why would you do that? Why would you pay him more when you have you own the rights to a guy for 3 years until he's 31, 32 anyway, and you have no guarantee on it. So if he gets hurt, like what happened, you don't have to worry about being stuck in a guaranteed contract for the next year. So JD looks like a genius coming out of all that. This thing all started with my question of, I just can't believe New Orleans makes this deal with this guy. I just can't believe it. Like, he's coming back from Achilles. There's a strong possibility that he's not going to be the same at all. And it's not like he was a superstar. He was a very good player. But remember, he was a very good player to us on a team that was horrendous. So I don't know if he's a very good player on a championship quality team. I know he's just a good player. And it's not a position I value that much that you'd want to give up such a heavy amount of money anyway, or take a big risk in anyway. Not that I don't think all positions are important, but it's not like we're talking about edge, or we're talking about a position where if they do come back, it's a game-changing type of thing for the team.
Fair point. Fair point.
Let's see. I just want to welcome Jets Mess. I didn't get to say hello to you, James Gang, Charles B. Bunch of people joined. Hader Ali is hanging out, which is cool. Good to see you, brother. And let's move on to pick number 10. Are we there yet, Dom? I think it's time we talk about pick number 10 and a worst case scenario.
Why don't we start with Paul? Best case scenario on pick 10.
The best receiver on your board. Whoever the best wide receiver is on the New York Jets board, he's there at 10, you take him. And the only team I think that could step in front of them is the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Atlanta Falcons could take a receiver. This is a tank year for them anyway. So they're saying, well, we'll draft our quarterback next year, and we'll have his receiver with a year under his belt ready for him. I could see them drafting a receiver. Other than that, I don't see any team that's going to draft a receiver in the top 10. The Jets are going to have their pick, and it's probably going to come down to one of three guys, and whichever one they grade the highest, who they think is their number one receiver for Zach Wilson, although I quite frankly think Elijah Moore is the number one receiver, but whoever that's my best case scenario. Easy. Whoever the number one receiver is on the New York Jets board, they find him and make him a 10.
Okay. And Paul, just curious, if you had your pick of the litter, say Atlanta surprises us and they take Derek Stingley Jr. or Ahmad Sauce Gardner at 8, and no receivers are taken by the time we're 10. You're on the clock. It's your pick. Who you taking?
Wilson.
Okay. That's fair. Jeremy, your thoughts? 10?
I'm in practically 100% agreement with Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to pretend that I have any qualification that comes even close to Joe Douglas and that team. To me, so I'm not going to say that like whichever wide receiver they take, if they're taking their number one wide receiver on the board, I'm trusting their judgment and I'm happy. My personal favorite, and I think you know this, is I'm a Jameson Williams guy, thick and true. Like true and true. Like I know he has the ACL, and I know we don't know exactly when he's going to be ready to play. But I'm thinking long term. We were going to trade a tremendous amount of capital for Tyreek Hill. We were going to give up a lot to acquire him. So in my brain, Jameson Williams long term has the best chance, so the best possibility of becoming a Tyreek Hill type of receiver. That kind of dominating type receiver has the highest ceiling. Now, if they took a Drake London or if they took a Garrett Wilson, I will not be angry. I will assume they did their research. They know our scheme better than I do. The coaching staff, they're professionals. Based on the direction of this team and what I've seen of this franchise in the past couple of years, I fully trust that team. It's not one of the teams where I'm thinking these guys are so stupid I could run the team better than them. I can't. So I'm going to live with whatever wide receiver they choose, and I'm going to be happy with it because I'm going to believe, just like they did with Elijah Moore, that they know how to find the best players.
Yeah. Well, this might not make great entertainment here, but I think I'm on board with exactly the same point that both of you guys said. However, I will add this into it. I'm also okay if we use 10 to trade down. Again, if they think that, if they have all three of those receivers graded relatively closely and they're okay with any of the three, which no one knows that besides, whoever's going to be in the war room for the Jets with Joe Douglas. I'm okay if they decide to move down. If somebody wants to come up for maybe 10 is the time people start looking at the quarterbacks because none of them are off the board, or, somebody wants to roll the dice on, a Stingley or a Sauce Gardner if he's still on the board, or maybe, one of the edges if Walker or Jermaine Johnson is still there and somebody wants to come up and get those. I'm okay. I'd be okay with the idea of trading back with an understanding that wide receiver still has to be, a direction that we go. If they have the three guys there rated the same or close to the same, and they're saying, listen, if we move down to 15 with Philadelphia, with the idea that, maybe Philadelphia is coming up to get a cornerback and we might lose one of those wide receivers to Washington who picks at 11. I'm okay with that, but I think, stick and stay. You take the best receiver, whoever their best receiver is on the board. And more than likely, I would probably hope it would be Garrett Wilson. Although I do have I'm of the minority where I really think that Drake London can be a very special talent in the NFL. I think his fit would be phenomenal on the Jets. And again, that's no disrespect to Jameson Williams. I think he's a phenomenal talent as well. I just kind of weigh it out like this. Is 8 games or 8 or 9 games of Jameson Williams worth, a full season of Drake London? I don't know. I think that scale is a little bit more tipped equal. Maybe even a little bit more Drake London. I think that, what Drake London can bring to the Jets is something that we don't have a receiver on the board that does. Strong, phenomenal, catch rate, big, wide catch radius. Forget about the 50-50 balls. And the fact that he's, always gaining yards after the catch is something that, he's really good. He's really good at, as well as the red zone 50-50 stuff, body control, all that stuff that Drake London brings. He's deceptively very twitchy. I know a lot of people hang their hats on, he can't separate at the line. He doesn't separate like Olave. He doesn't separate like Jameson Williams. He doesn't separate like Garrett Wilson does at the line, but he does gain separation. He uses his long frame. He knows how to use his body. He does his work, in that 0 to 10 yard range better than anybody in this draft. That's my feeling.
Okay. All right. Moving on to worst case scenario for 10.
Oof. You can start, Jeremy. You haven't started yet.
Oh man. So I mean, I guess you have to, like, worst cases. Let's assume. I mean, if we got our edge at 4, I guess for me the worst case scenario would be that we don't go wide receiver because Wilson is gone and we don't want either guy because they're banged up. And we decide to take a guy like Stingley, who I think could be an amazing player. And I think he will be. I think he will be amazing as long as he doesn't go to the Jets. I know that sounds like nuts. I'm not usually a superstitious person, but I just have this feeling that if we were to take Stingley, I have this feeling that he's going to have recurring injury issues and never really play with us. And I know that sounds nuts because I could see him going to a different team and having an amazing career and always arguing. But if he would have came to us, he wouldn't have been healthy. But I don't know. There's something about that pick that would really bother me. There's not really many directions I could see us go that would be a worst case, to be honest, because I don't know if someone slipped out of the top 10 and he went best player. I can kind of understand it a little bit. I don't know. I think more people would be upset with me if number 10 went to Kyle Hamilton. Like, I think there's a lot more people in the world that would be angrier than me. I wouldn't walk away feeling great about it because I really want a wide receiver, but I could tolerate it because I know he's a great player, and it's the number 10 pick, which is different if we were to take him at number 4. So it's a complicated question for me because I think that it would just be, I don't think there's a lot of scenarios that could be a worst case with that 10 pick. I think that there's a lot of good possibilities. I think there's going to be a lot of people trying to trade up. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers available. I guess the worst case scenario is just simply that they don't go wide receiver. That's my worst case scenario.
Yeah. So my worst case scenario would be that we leave 4 and 10 without an edge rusher.
Wow.
Yeah. If we went Ike Ekwonu and then someone else or Jordan Davis, or Jordan Davis at 10, that would be a worst case scenario for me. Even, and again, there's no disrespect to the players, but linebacker at 10, I think would be a worst case scenario. And here's why. I just don't know if the value there at 10 for those guys, the Devin Lloyds, the Nakobe Deans, are of peak value. So I think if we leave 4 and 10 without an edge rusher, that's the absolute worst case scenario. And you can plug in whatever player you want there. But I think that we have to get off. We have to leave 4 or 10 with our edge. I think that's of absolute paramount importance.
What do you think, Paul?
I agree with you. I agree with both of you. I think the worst case scenario is that they don't get an edge at 4-10, but the other worst case scenario is they in their grading grade one receiver an all-pro, and the others is just guys, and that guy they draft as the all-pro is taken. Then they do have an interesting scenario. Then if they have not drafted an edge at 4, do they take one at 10? Who they, a guy I don't like is Karlaftis, and I think I would hate that, where they just feel stuck at 10. They have to draft, him. I'd rather draft a guy from Minnesota later. I don't like Karlaftis one bit. And, yeah, I mean, we're all sort of on the same page there. I think we all want, the 10th pick to be a receiver with the hope that the 4th pick was an edge. But if the 4th pick is an offensive tackle and then the 10th pick is a receiver, wow, you haven't done much to help the defense that was a sieve in your first 2 picks. And you know 35 and 38 are going to be defensive players. So, there's some ugly scenarios here for the old Jets. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, I will. I'd agree with you in regards to Karlaftis. It's not that I don't necessarily like the player. I don't like the player at 10. And realistically, I don't know how much of the NFL likes Karlaftis in the top half of the draft. That's just my opinion, because measurables matter as much as we say they don't. The guy's got a constant motor, so on and so forth. Strong hands, this and that. But he's short, he's stiff, and I think he's very scheme specific. And I think that scheme is a 5 technique for a 3-4 base defense. Somebody like the Giants, somebody like Baltimore. I think Karlaftis can come in there and he can be their Leo Williams.
Yeah.
You know what about Karlaftis? I'm sorry. I was just saying what would bother me about him. I'm sorry. He had 4.5 sacks last year. Okay, they played some really good teams where he did nothing, but then they played some drag teams like the mighty Yukon Huskies. He didn't get a sack, and I just bothers me. Call me superstitious, but I'd like to see a guy. You can't look at 20 numbers. He got hurt. That, in fairness to him, but he went down in every way from 2019. He went down significantly in tackles. I don't think he could stop me running the ball, okay? He's never been a good run defender, but he got almost worse his last year. And I'd avoid him like the plague.
Yeah, I would agree with that at 10. If he slipped down to 35 and we still didn't address the edge, okay, you want to roll the dice. He's your best player on the board at that point. That's fine. Even though there's guys I like more that, for a fit for us, for the Jets, there's more. I like guys like Boye Mafe from Minnesota. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, is really, really not being talked about as, as a really top 30 player in this draft. I know that his age might come into it, because he's going to be 24, by the time the season gets, into full go. But athletically, he's on par with all these guys in the draft, the Trayvon Walkers of the world. Arnold Ebiketie, people are sleeping on him. So there's guys I like. There's guys I like more than Karlaftis. I'm not going to say I don't necessarily think Karlaftis is a bad player. I think he would be he wouldn't be my pick at 10. I'll leave it at that.
You talk about the guy from Penn State, whose name I can never pronounce. I have, in addition to Jets tickets, I have Temple season tickets. So I saw him play at Temple. Yeah. He was a dominant player, and he is a kid who never played football till he was 13 years old. He's from Cameroon, and he was a soccer player. And he only switched to football because the coaches kind of leaned on him in high school, telling him he might be able to get college scholarship. And he did what he did when he left Temple. He went to a much tougher conference, and he was very productive. I agree with you. He's the kind of guy, if the Jets lead 4-10 without an edge rusher, he's 35 to me.
Yeah.
That's to get your edge rusher there at 35. I like him
listen,
a lot. I saw because
me too.
the
I like
advantage
him
I
a lot.
had is I saw him play.
Yeah. He's a guy. If we leave 4 and 10 without an edge, he's a guy I trade up into the end of the first round for. You know, he's that talented.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I don't see any NFL team trading up for 3 first-round picks. Why? Because of the salary cap implications. Since the new CBA came in 2020, 2 teams have had 3 first-round picks. Miami last year and Philadelphia this year, and they both got rid of that 3rd first-round pick to get a future first-round pick, give them 2 the following year. I just don't see a team that wants to take the salary cap hit, 3 first-round picks in any given year, and then them all coming up for fifth-year options at the same time. I just don't see a team trading back for 3 first-round picks. I could be wrong, but if you look at the last 2 years, there was a reason those teams got rid of that 3rd first-round pick. They didn't want it. They wanted 2 first-round picks. In a perfect world, you have first-round picks every year.
Yeah, I felt that it was a great trade for the Eagles for that very reason. I thought that's great that they evened it out. 2-2 is much better than 3-1, especially when you think salary cap and like the cost of signing the players. I thought that was a great move by Philly to make that deal, and I think they got a lot in return for it too.
Well, I just want to touch on that a little bit more so for my own understanding and knowledge. If the cap is positioned right going down the road 3 or 4 years, as you know, Joe Douglas has been synonymous since he's been here. No one gets long-term contracts. You know, they're 2-year deal. You know, forget about the 1-year deals that we've seen the past 2 years. But even these contracts are for this free agent class that he brought in this year. I think the longest one is 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. So is it that big of a deal? And I don't know. I'm asking. Would the salary cap ramification be that big of a deal come year 4, year 5 if they turn into a player? You know, hypothetical.
Well, that's not the problem.
Okay.
The problem is if they don't turn into a player. You've now got guaranteed money for 4 years. And if that guy busts, remember the way it works with the first-round pick. The real cap hit comes in year 4. So if you get a Sam Darnold, suddenly you're paying, not that they'd get a quarterback, that's just an example. Suddenly you're paying him guaranteed money in the 4th year. You can't get him off your roster. And that's why I said the CBA. Look at what I was arguing with someone about this in the show I do for the Jets Lounge, and they said, well, they started going through all these teams that had 3 first-round picks in the last 10 years. I said, how many of them since 2020? The answer is none, because the salary cap math changed with the guaranteed first-round picks. So that's why I would say that. You don't want to be sitting there drafted poorly. And suddenly you're sitting there 3 years from now with the big hit for year 4 for 2 of your 3 picks who are busts. That would be the best way I would think somebody has my understanding of it.
Okay.
Heyo.
Yeah, we have a good question from Payo Time. He's our resident LA Rams YouTuber. I might be leading the league in Jets content provider in fans from other teams. Payo Time, who's also a friend of mine, not just the LA Rams YouTuber, but says, what are the odds of the Jets taking 2 defensive players in the first round? Well, I think that we all have them taking, if things go our way, an edge with the first pick. I know we all agree on receiver with the number 10 pick, but what are the odds that they don't take a receiver at all and that we're just wrong and they go for Kyle Hamilton if he slips, or they go for I can't even think of another position there that you'd go with 10. I don't know. I think we'd be irate. I think we'd be very pissed if they went Jordan Davis, as good as he is, with the 10th pick. I think there'd be a lot of angry Jet fans. But what do you think of the odds that we take 2 defensive players, Tom?
to put a number or a percentage on it, it would be way too hard. I'll say this, although I wouldn't like it at all, I think there's a better chance that we could, if the way the board falls, if we stuck at 4 and 10, that we took 2 offensive players over 2 defensive players. Again, wouldn't be the way I'd like to go about it, but I think, it just depends on how it falls. If you see edge come off the board 1, 2, 3, and which is not out of the realm, we could see Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and Kayvon Thibodeau come off the board 1, 2, 3 before we'll go on 4. And if that's the case, then we'll probably lean towards that offensive tackle, right? And then you come 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however you take it, we maybe we end up with our wide receiver there, So I think there's a better chance that we come off the board with 2 offensive players than we do with 2 defensive players. Again, not what I would want to do, folks.
What do you think, Paul?
I tend to think you're right, but if you're telling me would I be stunned, locked off my feet if they took a defender at 4 and a defender at 10, the answer is no. It tells me that they believe they can get a receiver at 35 or 38 who they can plug in to be their third receiver with an upside. Yeah, that I wouldn't be stunned. I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't be surprised, especially if Kyle Hamilton does fall. And I do think that might be an interesting scenario for the New Jets. I think if they're looking at, if they took an edge rusher at 4 and suddenly Hamilton is sitting there at 10, I wonder what they'd do. That would be a fascinating thing to watch.
In my mock draft that we put out that we put out on greenbeanjetsfan.com, that was my exact scenario, is that I took edge at 4 and Kyle Hamilton at 10, just the way I saw the board falling out. And I'd be okay with it, And again, what I don't like about that is that we're really hanging on hope that we're going to see some of these receivers fall through to us at 35, which is a tough pill to swallow if they don't. I could see 5 receivers easily 5 receivers come off, maybe 6 come off in the first round. So not to mention that Detroit and Jacksonville pick before us in the second, and Houston pick before us in the second round, all who could use a wide receiver. So you realistically could see 8 receivers off the board before we would have a chance to take our first one. And then we're stuck with that, with the likes of, hoping that a Sky Moore or a George Pickens, falls through and pans out, not ideal in Dom's world.
Right. And Kane Golder, new to the chat. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Hit the sub button and hit the like video. But welcome. I haven't seen you here before. You might be a long-time listener, first-time chatter. But in any case, worst case scenario begins with not getting Hutch or KT at 4. And we talked about that earlier. It's 100% correct. I think we all agree with that. There's no question that all of us started our worst case scenario with the scenario where we don't get one of those 2 players. We all want our edge at 4. I think that we all know the odds of getting KT are going to be a lot better than getting Hutch, but you never know. But I think that those 2, I think a lot of Jet fans agree. Like, it's really something we're hoping happens. We'd love to address edge at 4, and then kind of like last year, we got our quarterback, whether you liked it or not, whether you were a Zach guy or not, we secured our quarterback, and then we worried about the rest of the draft. I think it's a similar situation. I think in this draft, we secure our edge, and then we worry about the rest of the draft.
That's ideal, man.
Yeah. Let's see. So Cole. J. Cole is really talking up Drake London. It was saying he was a beast. Drake London, obviously, if he comes back full strength healthy and is not, just like we agree. Yeah, well, we all agree. There's a possibility he's going to be. I hear a comparison a lot, and Dom, I'd love your take on this. I hear the take of Michael Evans a lot when I hear Drake London. A lot of people like I've read Mike Evans, Mike Evans, Mike Evans. What's your take on that?
So, I like Drake London, and I think Jeremy. I have him. I have him probably rated higher, or probably close to a 1B if Garrett Wilson is 1A. A lot more than others. I don't necessarily see the Mike Evans comp. I think it's an easy correlation that people make because they're both big and so on and so forth. I see more AJ Green than I see Mike Evans. And two completely different ball players. What Drake London can do with the ball in his hands after the reception, the yards after the catch, the twitchiness that he has in his ability. Again, we might not have the most. He might not be the best off the line or have that straight line speed. But what he does with the ball after the catch reminds me a lot more of AJ Green than of Mike Evans.
Okay.
50-50 catch and stuff like that. Yeah, there's big guys are gonna draw that comparison. So
Right.
I think it's a comparison that's made from a very high level. They're both 6'4", 6'5" guys. They're both 215, 220 pounds. They're going to be the same receivers, but they're really not. They're really not.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Clutch comes in and says, "Did the Jets trade back from 4?" We were talking about that before. I think that if Tibbs and Hutchinson are off the board, if there's no edge there, then it's all, is there a buyer, right? The key thing is there has to be a buyer. Somebody has to want to trade up to that 4 pick. I think that we answer the phone. I think without question, Joe Douglas answers that phone. If it's ringing and Thibodeau and Hutch are off the board, he's going to answer that phone, and he's going to be very, very, very open-minded, and he's going to listen to offers. I don't think there's any question about it. But obviously the price has to be right.
I don't think I personally don't think there's a scenario, no matter who's on the board, that if the phone rings, JD's not going to listen and listen with intent.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's that kind of, he's that kind of general manager. He's going to listen to anything or anyone that comes calling. You know what I mean? And if there's a group of guys, if there's a tier of players where he says, okay, I have these 4 guys here, and for us to move back 3 spots, there's still going to be there's still going to be one of those 4 guys. So if it makes sense and the value is there, no matter who's on the board, even with KT, I think he'll listen.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it never hurts to answer the phone, but I reiterate what I said before. I don't know if the person who asked the question was listening. If the scenario that I think is the nightmare comes through, where it's Hutchinson, Thibodeau, and Ekwonu go 1, 2, 3. If some team's trading up, it's because they want Neal or Sauce Gardner, and it's not going to be the quarterback trade where you get a million picks and hype. It's just not. You're going to get something to move back a little because a team really, really wants Sauce Gardner. Maybe it's Washington. Maybe it's, I don't think the Giants would. They're in such an early rebuild. I don't think they're in a position to be giving up picks. But Washington, might view themselves as a contender. So, that's where I think the trade down would be. But I think we all should remain hopeful that somehow one of those 3 players doesn't go in the top 3, and then the Jets, have their higher rated player there. And there might be someone, we're all speculating. I don't like Karlaftis or Johnson necessarily. You might not think that Trayvon Walker is worth the 4th pick, but there may be someone who Douglas just looks at and says he's the best player other than those top 2 guys. And if he's there, he's not my 5th, 6th choice. He's my 2nd choice, and that's who I'll take. So we'll find out. stuff kind of leaks as you get a little closer to the draft. But the Jets are. I will say this: they are closed mouth. All these guys who claim to have sources on Twitter, yeah, they have sources, and I dated Jennifer Aniston when I was younger. You know, I don't think that any of us really know, because Douglas this isn't the McCagnon day when he would leak stuff to Manish Mata. This guy keeps his mouth shut, and so none of us really know, do we?
No, we don't. But I will say this: I'd be willing to bet, if anything, if I can make one statement.
Okay.
The idea is that cornerback is an option at 4 is off the table. I just don't. I don't think that that's happening. You know.
I agree with you. I think his history. I mean, Cimini had a very good story today in the New York on ESPN. And he said that. He said, just look at Seattle when he was there. Look at San Francisco. They didn't draft cornerbacks high. That's not the way they do things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very fair and accurate point. But another team might look at Sauce Gardner or Stingley. You know, I would be terrified of Stingley because of that foot. But there's another team that might look at him and say, 2019 Stingley was the first pick overall in a draft if he gets drafted. Yeah. That's how good he was. So,
well, that's what, and I'm not sure, I don't know the history of the Lisfranc and what he's really coming back from and how much that's going to affect his long-term ability to, be the player that he was in 2019. But there's going to be somebody that banks on the fact that he's going to get back to that style, that type of play. Because the talent and the athleticism is unmeasured for Derek Stingley. I'm a fan. I'm not necessarily a fan for us at 4'10", but I'm a fan of the player, and I think he, if he can get back to that, watch out. Somebody's, we're going to look back at this draft in 5 years and say, wow, look at all these teams that passed over Derek Stingley.
That could very well happen.
Yep.
But the history of, I've looked it up, and in terms of Lisfranc injuries, there's been one corner who had it that I could find. It was Ty Law, and he had it right before he came to the Jets. And he played really great that year. He had 10 interceptions. It didn't seem to affect him, but he didn't play much longer in the NFL. So my question is, this guy's a kid.
Yeah.
What's that foot going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? I don't know. And that would bother me. That's the unknown for me that would really cause me to hesitate.
Yeah. Flipping topics a little bit. And it's funny because Dark Soldier says, I can hear JD talk on the phone. He'd love to hear JD on the phone when he's trying to make a deal and trade. And I think we'd all agree that would be fascinating to hear. Jets One Drive last year, we got to see some cool conversations that take place in the draft room. Can you imagine getting to hear JD on the phone working one of his deals? Can you, how much would you pay for the tape of that Sam Darnold trade, of the discussion and the amount of phone calls and the negotiating tactics he used to get that haul for Sam Darnold?
I think it would be actually, I on the contrary, I think it'd probably be pretty boring, because I think JD kind of has his mindset, and he's got numbers, and he's got, what he'll give and what he won't. And I don't think that there's probably a lot of flexibility in it. So somebody can come calling, and he's going to say, yeah, you want to come up to 4, Washington, you want us to drop back to 11? Okay. It's going to take it's going to take your second, it's going to take 11. It's going to take your second rounder. It's going to take your first rounder next year. And, Cameron Curl, your young upcoming safety. Washington says, oh, you're crazy. That's way too much. Okay. JD says, see you later.
But that's what I mean. You don't think it's guys like us? You don't think they get to know each other? And it's you don't think they're like, oh, you effing kidding me? Come on, Dom, get real. Get real, Dom. You need to throw in a third. Come on. What are you smoking? You don't think it ever gets to be that kind of conversation?
Maybe with some of these guys, but my take on JD is that he's strictly business, man. strictly business. But he's a magician nonetheless. For someone to get us a 6th-round pick for Blake Cashman, I'll never question the guy.
How about you? How about you, Paul? I'm wondering if you being what you did for a living, because one of the things I was going to say when I found out what you did for a living and I saw that comment was, man, do anything to have been a fly on the wall in some of the negotiations you must have had with defense attorneys on negotiating, like cutting deals and everything. Is it boring? Is it more just you give an ultimatum and there's nothing more to it? Or is there colorful conversation?
It's funny. When I was in the DA's office in Philadelphia, I was in the homicide unit for half the time there. And everyone sees Law and Order and they see the defendant and his lawyer come in and you talk. It wasn't like that. First of all, the defendants are in custody. Secondly, when I was in the DA's office, unlike the fraction of a man who sits there now as a district attorney, we had a real tough DA who we did not plead a lot of cases out. But when you did have negotiations, voices sometimes got loud, and sometimes you gave ultimatums, and people, if you call someone's bluff and then they move a little bit, you know that they're not real. You don't have to worry about them. They're more bluster. And I think that's probably the same thing with football. I mean, I call you up and I say, hey, I want to trade for Jamal Adams. And you say, you're Joe Douglas, I want 2 firsts and a third. And I say, well, I won't give it to you. And Joe Douglas says, okay. He doesn't blink, That would be my guess. It would be kind of interesting in some respects. But we'll, everyone, it's funny, that show that they have me doing the Jets Lounge is Wednesday nights. And it dawned on me last week that I'm going to do the show the night before the draft. I'll do the last one the night before the draft, which I kind of like, because I think that'll be really, everybody will be geared up. Have either one of you ever attended the draft?
I have not.
Never in person. Nope.
I went to the one in Philadelphia when, unfortunately, we chose Jamal Adams and Marcus May, the brilliant 2nd-round pick after you picked the safety in the 1st round. I went to the one in Philadelphia because that's where I live, and it's very interesting when you're there because there's so much anticipation in the crowd, and it gets almost quiet when Goodell comes out to announce the pick, because everyone's sort of on the edge of their seat if they weren't. That was the Trubisky trade. And people were stunned. We're just stunned about that. If you ever get a chance, I would encourage anyone, if you ever get a chance to go to a draft, to do so. I'm glad. It's one of those things you try to do a lot of things, and that was one of the things I'm glad I did.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing experience, man. I always did want to go. Ever since my earliest draft memory was the whole Ken O'Brien, Dan Marino. And ever since then, I always wanted to be in the crowd during a draft. And I don't know why it never happened. I guess when it was still in New York every year, I guess I was too young to make it happen. I didn't have any. And my dad wasn't like a huge football fan. I had no support in that way. I was on my own, so there was no way to make that happen.
Yeah, it was when it was in New York. My brother was the reason. I had a much older brother. He's been dead many years, but he was the reason I was a Jets fan. He had Jets season tickets the year they won the Super Bowl. So he got me involved. I've had tickets since 1978. So I've had tickets for a long time, and I've seen a lot of bad games. But I've seen some good ones too. Yeah. I've seen some couple of real good ones that I hope before I die I'll get to see a few more.
I was actually in Philadelphia because I used to go 2 weekends to Philly every year. My dad's a musician and plays bluegrass and folk music, so we used to go to the big Philadelphia Folk Festival, and we used to go to all these. Yeah, And then the Philadelphia Folks Festival Society, like they had these weekends, like all the musicians would go and they would rent out like campgrounds and like a day camp for kids, but it was in the spring before the kids went there for the summer, that kind of thing. And I'll never forget, I was in Philly trying to follow the game, get it on the radio, and the game that the Jets won 55-48. And I know you were probably at that game with the Ken O'Brien, one of the Ken O'Brien Dan Marino battles.
Yeah, that was a that was a very good game. The people ask me all the time the best game I ever went to. It's a little different. So I'm going back a long time, but the Jets were terrible in my childhood. They were awful from 1971 until 1981. And they were, at the end of the year, they were playing the Miami Dolphins at home. And it was a 4:00 game, so it was late. It was around 7. And there was only Abdul Salam stopped, I believe it was Davenport, on a 4th and 1. And the Jets took over, and Richard Todd led them the length of the field. And as the clock ran out, he hit Jerome Barkham in the end zone to win the game, to put the Jets in first place for the first time in a decade. And that was probably one of the best games I ever saw. That was one of the most exciting games I ever saw because of everything that represented for the Jets, the franchise turning it around. That was pretty cool.
I can imagine.
Pretty cool, yeah. Yeah, man, I can't even imagine that just to know you were at all those games. My God. It's funny because the biggest game that I was at, it wasn't even, it was an away game. The biggest game I was ever at was in 2004, against this, when we beat the San Diego Chargers the week before we lost to Pittsburgh. That was the best game I was ever at. It was an overtime game. It was amazing. The only problem was I was like scared for my life because people wanted to kill me.
Oh yeah, I've experienced that. I've been at a lot of games road games. Remember, I live outside of Philadelphia, so I go see the Rangers play here all the time. Uh-huh. And I've had people throw things at me, scream at me. Oh yeah. No one. I will say this for the record: the Jets have our share of cretins for fans. I freely admit that. There's nothing that compares to Eagles fans. Nothing. I've gone to my share of Eagles games just with friends when the Jets are on the road. I've never seen anything like it. They are terrifying. The one fan group I'd be truly frightened of because they don't care. We had a courtroom built in the Vet Stadium to arraign people immediately after they committed a felony in the stands.
Oh my God.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I think the only group of fans scarier than the Eagles fans might be the Flyers fans. I mean, and they're probably all around the same, but I find it funny. Like football is bad. I go see the Mets play all over the place. I'll go to the road. Like I said, I just saw them play. I just saw them play in Washington, and I saw them play in Philly just this past week. And I always go down to Citizens Bank Park whenever they're down there, and the Mets fans, there's a respect between the Phillies fans and the Mets fans. It's not nearly as heated. I'd be scared to go to see the Flyers play wearing a Rangers jersey. Where I'm not scared to go wear a Mets jersey at Citizens Bank to see him play the Phillies.
I will tell you a funny story. Again, it's not funny. It's terrible, but I witnessed it. I went to see the Giants play the Eagles, and I'm in the men's room, and I'm doing what men do in the men's room. I'm standing at the urinal. There's a guy 2 over on my right wearing a Lawrence Taylor jersey, and these 2 Eagle fans stand behind him and urinate all over him.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I saw it with my own eyes, and he was terrified. He didn't do anything. What could he do? They would have stuffed him in the toilet. So that'll give you an idea of the fine fan base in Philadelphia.
Wow. I think the closest thing I can compare to that here on the West Coast since I moved out here was when the Raiders were in Oakland. Going into Oakland, it was probably the West Coast version of the Philly fans. Like they were violent. If you wore, oh my god, especially if you went into a Raiders game wearing a Kansas City Chiefs jersey, you might not walk out of that stadium. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah, and they take pride. I will say this: the fans here take pride in being violent. They really do. It's a source of pride. I said I used to prosecute some of these guys after the games. It was hilarious. I just and they really took great pride in doing that. I mean, I saw a guy go into this is terrible, a porta potty in the Vet Stadium parking lot in a I think it was a Cowboys jersey, and a bunch of Eagles fans locked they blocked the door so he couldn't get out, and they rolled it down a hill with him in
Oh
it.
my god.
Think that felt good?
Ugh.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, but that was that. Yeah, bringing back some fun memories. One thing about being on the Jets Twitter page is I realize I'm probably one of the older guys. So unfortunately, I've seen things, good and bad, that a lot of the other guys. My first game was in 1972 when Joe Namath had missed the whole season, and he came back and he was the backup, and they played the 49ers, and he hadn't played in a year and a half, and he came off the bench and threw for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half, and then lost when he threw an interception in the end zone. So I go back that far, and I'm glad I've been able to say I saw him play. He was incredible, and he had no leg. He couldn't move. I mean, his knees were ruined, and he still, he still had that flick of a wrist. It was hard to describe how good he was because he played against the old rules. I mean, everything before 1976, the rules were so different. You could hit the receiver literally all the way down the field, and you could head slap the offensive lineman, and you could hit the quarterback with impunity, and he put up those numbers. When he put up the 4,000 yards, the closest guy to him was Hadel. I think Hadel had 2,800. So it was yeah. Now I'm boring you with old stories.
No,
No, not boring at all, man. They're not that old.
I love those old stories, especially hearing about guys like that. Like I didn't get to see them play. You get to see little highlight reels. I always imagine what it was like, but I feel the same way when I'm telling people what it was like to watch Gastineau and Klecko and Abdul Salam and Marty Lyons, and like trying to explain to the younger fans, like you have no idea. That's why you can't take too many edges, and you know this, Paul. I mean, just that feeling of like wanting to be on defense, like you couldn't wait until the other teams like would get the ball so you could watch your defense just dominate.
Oh, it was Klecko before he blew out that knee against the Patriots. He was almost unstoppable, and he was really good after that. But he was so good before that. And I there was a game, you were probably very young, but Sports Illustrated put John Hannah on its cover, and the cover photo was just him in his helmet, and it said the greatest lineman in NFL history was John Hannah. And by coincidence, the Jets played them Sunday at Shea, and Klecko was all fired up, and he went up against Hannah, and he picked Hannah up and threw him into Steve Grogan to get a sack. That's how good and strong Joe Klecko was before that knee injury. I remember that like it was yesterday. I mean, he picked him up. He literally picked him up and threw him. He was one of the 5 greatest players to think in the team history, and it's a shame he's never going to make the Hall of Fame. But
it's a travesty. It's a travesty, and it's disgusting. It makes me. I don't even acknowledge the Hall of Fame. Like I'll never go there. I'll never really acknowledge it without him in there because to me it's a giant hypocrisy.
Yeah, I've been to the Hall of Fame, and it's funny. I took my son out to look at colleges out there, and we went to the Hall of Fame, and I was looking around saying, well, I saw him play. He wasn't as good as Klecko. I saw him play. I mean, it's weird. And I'm not just being a Jets fan. Like I said, I get ripped all the time on Twitter. They call me a fraud fan because I don't wave the pom-poms. I'm not, I say what I think. I'm too old at this point to give a damn. And I will tell you, Klecko was the best player I ever saw play for the Jets on defense. Revis had the best season I ever saw, but Klecko in his prime was the best player I ever saw. That's how good he was.
It's funny too. It's funny that you say that. Sorry, Jeremy.
No, go ahead.
Because I mean, granted, although I'm a little bit younger than you, Paul, when I think back of, in my brain of those days, Klecko sometimes is the forgotten one, right? Everyone always talks about Gastineau and everyone, Marty Lyons, but Klecko is like the one that, seems like he was, like you painted a perfect picture of the player that he was for me, a guy who might not remember him playing. But, I always think of you think of Gastineau, you think of the 20 sacks or, so on and so forth. Just like, fast forward a couple years, quite a few years when, we had Abraham and Ellis, Abraham got all the, the fame and the attention, but, Ellis was a damn good player that that didn't get his, his rightful, place, I think.
Yeah, I just want to say
and go ahead.
No, I was just going to throw in about Klecko, Paul. The thing I loved about him is, remember when he switched positions and then he was dominant in the inside as well. So like where do you see it? When do you nowadays do you see a player that's all pro level, that's like the best, one of the best in the NFL in a totally different position? And Klecko played everywhere on that defensive line. He was just incredible.
He was the only man who will ever. There will never be another player who was a Pro Bowler at three positions. He was a Pro Bowler at nose tackle, defensive tackle, and defensive end. Never, ever, ever in our lifetime will someone be a Pro Bowler at three different slots. He did it. Hey, I see somebody has a quick question here. They asked, I'm looking at it, whoever J. Cole is.
Yep.
He said, who would I rather have, Drake London or Jameson Williams? I have this argument with people all the time about Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams before January was the best receiver in the draft. I just don't know who Jameson Williams is going to be. I don't know. I mean, I know that I did a lot of research, and I know that 87% of the guys who have ACL surgeries are just fine, but 13% of them aren't. They never return to what they were. And more importantly, 6% of the 87% either re-rupture the tendon like Odell Beckham Jr. did, or they rupture the other one. Yeah. And so I don't know at this point who Williams will be. So if you're telling me, if my doctor looks me in the eye and says, based on what I've seen, and it hasn't been long, remember, he got operated on January 18th.
Yep.
So, if he tells me I'm confident he will be in time the player he was, then I'd rather have him. But I don't know. All I know about Drake London is he's healthy.
And I'm glad you said that, because again, I think Jameson Williams is a phenomenal talent, but the question mark or the flag that points to me and is fire engine red is just that. Like, he was the best receiver in this class. We just don't know. And I can't, I want to wrap my head around the idea that, even with all that minutia aside, that he still makes sense for us at 10. And I just can't get there. I can't get there right now. I'm not knocking the people that do, and it's no disrespect. I know Jeremy loves him, and I know Frankie, from Flatbush loves him, and I know there's a bunch of guys that, really believe in the player and that he would be the great fit. I can't put 8 games, hopefully 8 games of Jameson Williams above, a healthy Drake London or Garrett Wilson or, whatever your wide receiver of choice may be.
I will be very happy with whatever Joe Douglas does. So if he does take Drake London, as much as I talk about Jameson Williams, and if he takes Drake London or Garrett Wilson, if he takes whatever he does, you're not going to see me screaming and yelling and saying that's a horrible mistake. You made a mistake. I'll just say, oh, I guess I was wrong. Because like I said before, I'll never put my ability to scout and look at players based on me watching YouTube above what those guys do. They're trained. They do what they do. I wouldn't expect any of those guys to come to my elementary school and be able to run it for a day.
Yeah.
So, so it's the same thing. I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I can go in and do their job.
Yeah.
So, if they pick receiver at 10 on draft day, I'm going to be very happy.
So I got a question for you guys, both Paul and Jeremy. Maybe touch on this. Let's just say we got our edge and receiver. It doesn't matter in which order we got them, but 4 and 10, we took edge and receiver, right? Where are you looking, whether it's specific players or positional groups? Where do you think would be the best case scenario for us at 35 and 38?
I don't think you can say a specific player because there's too many guys to draft to get to 35. I don't think you can do that at 4. We know it'll be one of 4 or 5 guys. I don't think you can say player, so I'll say position. I think they have to draft a linebacker, and I think if they did not draft an offensive lineman with those first 2 picks, I would expect an offensive tackle. That's why I think linebacker, absolutely an offensive tackle, and if not linebacker, safety, an offensive tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm leaning. I think safety is I think safety even over linebacker personally. But I think I think you hit it on the head. I think safety, I think linebacker, defensive, maybe defensive lineman. Again, that could be a sneaky, a sneaky need. Although, with some of these signings, Solomon Thomas coming in, some of these band-aids on the bullet hole kind of signings with him and bringing back, oh my God, the Canadian, what's his name, who we just re-signed? Help me out here.
Did we re-sign LDT? Is that what you're talking about?
No, defensive lineman, not Foley. Nathan Shepard.
You're not talking about Wilson, who they signed from Houston.
No, I was talking about Nathan Shepard. But, some of these guys that maybe defensive line isn't an area that they're going to look, but, safety, linebacker, offensive line is probably the way I'd go. More so definitely than a double up, which I know a lot of people are talking about double up at wide receiver, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would think, if we get the edge and wide receiver, I would expect it to be safety linebacker-ish. It wouldn't shock me if they took a tackle, if it was best available player, like if somebody slipped, if Perion Winfrey or Devontae Wyatt, if one of those guys was there and they took him, it wouldn't shock me. I'm not saying it's what I want, but I wouldn't be blown away and I wouldn't be screaming, how is that possible that happened?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be blown away if they took another edge, if there was someone else that they loved that slipped there. Like if they took, Ebektai, I don't think I can say his name right, or a boy
Ebiketie,
or a Boye Mafe. If they took a guy like that, even that wouldn't be a total shocker, just given the Achilles that Carl Lawson had. That if they go even heavier on that position, but I would expect linebacker, safety. I mean, that's kind of where and there's other areas I could see us going because there's going to be great players. Like if Tyler Lindenbaum slipped and he was there at 35, I don't know if it's smart to take him or not. We can go talk all day about these things, but it wouldn't surprise me. It's not like it wouldn't improve our team if they grabbed them. So, it's hard for me to say exactly, but the glaring holes in our team defensively right now to me is we need better edge. And if we address that at 4 and we have Carl Lawson coming back and hopefully some hope that he's going to be what he was, then the need shifts to safety or linebacker. It's really clear to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all sort of on the same page there for 35 and 38. I have to actually be in court in about 8 hours, so I'm going to sign off in a minute. I just wanted to see if we want to talk about one more thing real quick to each give our thoughts on something. I've certainly enjoyed talking to you guys. This is all new to me since I joined the Jets Lounge and did that show, and I found that it makes you rethink. Like I said, I'll give you an example. I was completely against Ekwonu, even though I think he might be the best player in the entire draft. I really do. I think he might be the best. Forget position. But then I've listened to so many people that, I changed my mind. I said, you know what? I get why they might draft him. And other things then have to happen, like moving font, but I get it. So that's the plus to me of doing these type of shows, that you hear other people's opinions, and I'm not as close-minded as you might think. And I actually, now Pete, trust me, I people have told me I'm very close-minded. That's an example. I changed my mind. The other day we were put on the spot. Someone said to me, "Who'd you take if Thibodeau's gone?" And I said, "I'd take Ekwonu." And I wouldn't have said that a month ago. So, that's the good thing, the value in these, that you hear other people's opinions, and you realize there are a lot of smart guys who might be insurance salesmen or artists or teachers, or there's not any smart lawyers. Trust me, I know that. But and they really know their stuff. And there's one guy who I deal with all the time who actually played Division I football. He was a safety at New Mexico, and he has very good, interesting thoughts, and I like to listen to him. So these have a lot of value to people, I think.
Yeah,
it's good. This was very good. This is very well run. I'm sorry I had the connection problems, but I'm in a house without internet, and believe it or not, and so it's easier to just do it this way. And but I thought it worked out well for the last hour and a half. I think we've had good connection.
No, it's been fantastic.
absolutely. Yeah.
We really appreciate having you, Paul. I didn't know what you'd say when I reached out to you to be part of it. I just heard you on the lounge so much, and I really respect your takes. I just love the passion that you have for the Jets. And I said, boy, I'd love to have him on the show. I wonder if he'd be interested. And I'm really, really glad and happy you came on. And I hope you'll come on again in the future.
I will. It was real well run. And, we'll talk again either right before the draft or right after it. And we'll see if Joe Douglas is as smart as our collective thoughts, right? We'll see if you followed our advice. All right. Well,
We only hope so. We only hope so. Yeah.
Well, for the
Paul,
rest of the
thank
night.
you,
Take
man.
care.
Listen,
Take care,
I'll see you on the
Paul,
lounge, and I'll see you on the lounge. And now that we've had some communication, maybe I'll put my hand up and talk more than just listen.
All right, great. It's Wednesday. I do my show Wednesday night at 7. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye, Paul.
Bye-bye. All right. That was Paul Riley. Again, if you haven't joined the Jets Twitter lounge, the Jets Lounge on Twitter, I don't know what you're waiting for or why you haven't. It's an incredible place to meet up. They get former NFL players in there. They get what is it, Woody, Damian?
Damian Woody, yeah.
Damian Woody. I'm like already. You can tell my brain is fried. They get Rich Samini's in there, and you guys know.
Jake Asman pops in every so often. Yeah, I mean it's wild.
Yeah, Green Bean's been in there. Obviously, Green Bean's been a featured guest, and Ryan from Jets Talk has been there, and you never know who you're gonna bump into there. But it's always great conversation. Sack Exchange, Stephen is great. He started this whole thing. He really built up something special, and I thought it'd be great to have Paul Riley because he's one of the voices that you hear in the lounge all the time, and it was great to have his voice here. So we'll have him again in the future for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's see. Next time, what I'd really like to do is, and we'll definitely do it, is talk to Paul about salary cap, because is a lot of expertise in that area, and I wanted to talk to him about these teams and how they manage to put salaries off in the future, and what the ramifications. Are they going to get away with it? Are they not going to get away with it? Because a lot of people think, oh, these other teams get away with it. Why can't we?
Yeah.
But I think that Paul will change people's mind when you hear what he has to say about eventually the shit hitting the fan for these teams that do that and what
He's
they're
talking to you, Payo.
Yeah.
Jeremy's talking directly at you.
I want to welcome Stanley to the chat. We were talking, so we didn't get to welcome him officially. Owen and Eminon is here. Jets Mess has been very active, and J. Cole needs lots of love, so I'll just keep saying his name over and over again when I do that. J. Cole, you've been very well behaved overall. We're very proud of you. So let's look at this. I thought this was an interesting chat that Stanley Spector was at the Jets-Eagle game at Shea, and they took an Eagles cap off of somebody's head and they set it on fire. And I remember the game because of Johnny Mitchell. I remember the Johnny Mitchell went wild game. Like, I remember his breakout game where he was like, for that one game, he really looked like everything we dreamed and hoped he could be.
Mm.
And he was electric. He was a great athlete. He was electric. He just never seemed to put it all together over an entire career. But, man, he shined that day. I mean, he was explosive. The tight end we always would, we dream about today. That's what he was that one game. I'm trying to be nice after all the crap. Don't push it. Oh, he's being nice. Okay. There's always conversation going on in the chat we don't know about.
Yeah.
Do you think they will take Icky if top edges are gone at 4? Well, I think we were talking about that. I'm a believer now more than I was. I thought there's no way, it's not a position of need. But after hearing the takes of, possibly trading Fant, look, if Fant wants $18 million a year, I don't want to sign him to $18 million a year based on just last year.
No, and at 31 years old, going to be 32 after this season, I don't think he can. I mean, listen, if anything, I mean, there's a little bit more longevity at the offensive line position than, say, at running back or wide receiver, so on and so forth. But, the skill set doesn't diminish as much. But, I mean, that's a lot of coin. It's hard to throw the bag, a bag that big at somebody who realistically you're hoping that he has 2 to 3 good years left. If you said, all right, listen, another 1 year, 12 million or something like that. Okay, maybe I can get behind it, but yeah, listen, again, gun to my head, I'm hoping they don't take offensive linemen at 4. But I think, and I've said this for months now, there's probably 10 or 12 different players that if their name comes off the board at 4, I'd say, okay, yeah, I get it, and let's now he's a Jet. Now I'm a fan. Let's go get it.
Yep. Owen, I would trade and make somebody pay to take Ickham. And that's what you guys were talking about before. You said more likely than somebody willing to trade up for a quarterback. You believe that it's more likely someone would trade up to get an Icky or a Sauce Gardner or someone like that. One of the guys that we might not want to take because of our positional needs.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. He's probably saying that because I said Green Bean was in the Jets lounge. Green Bean is everywhere because he gets invited everywhere. He's just a super popular dude. Everybody wants him on his show, so you're going to see him pop up on different channels all over YouTube. What can you get for fun? A late second, a third? I'll take that and run. I think the challenge there, and Dom was alluding to it before, is we might not get that much because of the salary. So what do you think? What do you think is the best we would get? Now, keep in mind as you answer this question, Dom, we're talking about JD.
Listen, realistically, I think a 4th round pick. I think you're getting a 4th round pick for him. Could that come now? Could the value of a 4th round, early 4th, late 3rd, probably around the same? I don't see a situation where you're going to get much more than that. Not for a 31-year-old guy in a contract year, who has not put, again, not trying to throw shade on the guy, but he hasn't put 2 good years of tape together back to back in his career yet.
Well, what if let's think of teams like Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Kansas City, Cincinnati. What if a team, Chargers, what if Raiders, what if a team that potentially believes they're in a win now situation, like a situation where they could win the Super Bowl this year,
Mhm.
where they believe we're going in, and this is a year we could, Rams included, let's put the Rams in that category. We really believe we can win the Super Bowl. And then let's say, oops, blah, their tackle goes down in OTAs, ACL, out for the year. You don't think they're willing to take, if they can make it work with the salary cap, you don't think they're willing to give up a third or a second for 23?
I don't think you're going to get a sec. I don't think you're going to get a second for George Fant. No. Let's put it in perspective, right? The Jets were close to getting Tyreek Hill for 2 seconds. What makes you think that you're going to get a second rounder for George Fant? I just don't see it. Listen,
Right.
the situation you explained where somebody goes down, there's a little bit more pressing matters at hand. Maybe you get a third. Yeah. And I'd say if it's a situation like that and a win now team, it's going to be a late third. But
Yeah.
you named a couple of teams that I think make total sense. If the Chargers miss out on a tackle in this draft, that's one of the biggest glaring holes that the Chargers have is they have nobody right now at right tackle. Bulaga or whoever they signed, the guy from Green Bay, has they cut ties with. So that's a position, and they're a team. They're a very good team. Possible win now. The Saints are in win now, and they have holes on that offensive line they need to address. They're a team that I could see, making a play. Tampa Bay has some holes on the offensive line, although right tackle seems to be solidified with Tristan Wirfs. I just don't see right now pre-draft 2022. There's only a handful of teams that I could see making a play for something like that. And you also got to remember, if we're looking to trade Fant because we drafted Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu or Charles Cross or somebody along the offensive line, we just lost a lot of, we just lost a lot of say in what they want. A team can say, well, you know what? Here's a 5th round pick. You don't want to take it? Okay. Then you carry his $10 million cap hit into the season, and good luck with that number 4 overall swing tackle that you just drafted. We lose a lot of, we lose a lot of flexibility in leverage in trades if and something like that happens. So I would say 4th round pick. If we drafted Ike Ekwonu at 4 and then the Chargers offered us a 4th round pick, which is in the upper middle half of the 4th round where they pick, I think you got to consider it.
Okay, but would you consider this? Because what Friggle D is saying, a 3rd round pick right now, like if the Charge in that scenario, instead of the 4th round pick, they offered us a 3rd round in 23. That's the same amount of draft value and draft value points.
Yeah. However, I think overall, I think the NFL teams are going to, be on the same page with this. Is that a draft pick in 23 is much more valuable than a draft pick in 22 right now. It's just a better class, So you got to factor that into the equation as well. But yeah, I listen. Could you get a 3rd round pick? Maybe, based on the trades that you see. Player, I mean, Shaq Mason, he got traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from New England Patriots. Shaq Mason's a phenomenal guard. He's not a tackle, he's a guard, and they got a 6th round pick for him, right? What did Amari Cooper get? What did he net Cleveland? What did he net from Cleveland? A 5th rounder? Right? We talked about the DK Metcalfs of the world and so on and so forth, where no one wanted to give up a 1st rounder. They'd take a 2nd rounder for DK Metcalf. I just don't see it. I don't see a situation where you're going to get much more than a 2nd rounder is just not on the table. Barring midseason injury for a team that's 7-0, something like that, where you really have all the leverage in the world, I just don't see a scenario where you're going to get a second round pick, whether it's this draft, whether it's next draft, whether it's 2028. I just don't see the scenario where you're going to get a second round pick for George Fant.
Well, he was thinking third, but I get your point, though. You're right about that. Next year's players are a lot better. We forget that. We get so sucked up in each year's players. Next year's class is going to be a much better class. I agree.
Correct.
Calvin Wright, new to the chat, I think. I don't know if you're new to the channel. If you are, please hit that like button, but more importantly, sub. Give me the sub, and join us more for more discussion and content. We're here multiple times per week, working our butt off to give you guys a voice and lead good Jets discussions. So please sub to the channel, help us out. And then in exchange, we'll answer this question for you. Or we'll address this question or this comment. You could trade Fant for a player.
Absolutely.
What do you think? What type of player do you think we could get? So there's one mention here. Fant for Grady Jarrett would be perfect, but it's so unlikely, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I don't know how much the Jets would have interest in a 30-something-year-old Grady Jarrett. Here's one for you. We pick Ekwonu at 4, or we pick Evan Neal at 4 or whatever, and we swing George Fant to Jacksonville for Laviska Shenault. Young receiver, underperforming, still on his rookie deal. Have 2 more years, 2 more affordable years for him. Maybe a change of scenery is something that he could do. That's a play I'd make.
Okay, I like that. I was thinking receiver, but I was thinking, man, receivers are so expensive and highly valued now. Who would do it? But that's a really good call out. I mean, take a chance on the kid. I mean, if we picked Icky anyway, I mean, we're probably going to play him over Fant, believe it or not. And Fant is just a depth player that cost us $9 million. We're probably going to end up cutting him if he doesn't renegotiate. Why not take a shot on a young receiver that we'll own for 2 years? Yeah. I mean, it would be great if Jacksonville was down for that.
Yeah. But like to the point of Grady Jackson, maybe a defensive lineman. If you're still not sold on Q, for the long term, maybe a defensive lineman of similar comparable measure. Maybe that's where you fill your linebacker. I don't know. Just food for thought.
You're saying how much would you want to pay Icky if he stays? I think that would depend on how good he was and what his success was. If he became the best, one of the best.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, because I think the slot, the pay scale is roundabout there. Depending on where he goes. He knows he's going to get between X and Y.
Right, like how much we'd want to pay Fant? He's saying. I mean, yeah. Well, the thing about Fant, I mean, is just that his age, right? So you're not going to do long term on him. We've got him 1 year, and then he's going to be 30. If we ended up I think he's got a couple more good years left. If we get him for the right price, that's fine. If we don't take Icky, if we take our edge, I don't think Fant is got 1 year left of productivity. I think we could have him for a few years. It's just a matter of if he wants $18 million a year. I just don't know if we pay him that much. Do you think JD is going to pay him $18 million a year?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I could see if they extend him, I could see something along the lines like 3 for 30, 3 for 33, something along those lines. And I don't know if that's enough to get him, but maybe it is.
Yeah.
I see Calvin says he'd pay him $52 for 4. Yeesh. I don't know. I'll respectfully disagree with you, Calvin.
I don't know. I would give him. I would happily give Fant a $13-14 million 2-year contract, 1 year guaranteed. So like 1 year, $13.5 million. Let's say the second year, $13.5. If we pick it up like after next year, like that kind of contract. Like I'd lock into him if he plays. Going into this year, I would if his agent was willing to right now say we could extend him like $14 million the next year, and the year after that is a team option at $14 million or something like that. I feel a little bit better moving forward. I mean, that would show us there's no way we're taking an offensive lineman in the first round. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. But
see, here's the thing with that though, Jeremy, is that the way that JD structured all the free agents this year, he structured them very light in year one with a big surplus in salary year two or years 2 and 3. So tacking George Fant on for 1 year at $14 million really might be really not kind of forward thinking in regards to salary cap, because the guys like Laken Tomlinson, Usama, Jordan Whitehead, all have big kickers in year 2 because they took lower contracts this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, that's where we need Paul back, right? Because he understands the Jets contract structures and the cap. And one day we'll talk about that, and he'll tell us what's realistic and what's not, and what our cap situation is going to look like next year and the year after that. And are we setting ourselves up intelligently for the big boom? And the big boom is going to be, first, you're going to have like the Becton situation and the Bryce Hall situation if he stays a meaningful player for us. And then the year after that, even though it's in the future, you're going to have your Zach Wilson, AVT.
What about Q?
That year. Yeah. Well, he got Q coming too. So, and that's first, right? I mean, Q is the first thing we have to address. So there's a lot to think about. We have to be really smart.
And as we're talking about this now, it makes more sense that maybe we do draft a tackle, whether it's at 4 or, at 35 or 38, and be prepared to let Fant walk, because I think if they're going to sign him, they're going to sign him now,
I agree. We have to start thinking about those things. You can't put off problems. That's not the way to run an organization. You have to have like a 5-year and even up to 8-10-year plan in place on paper to understand what your money is each year, what your plan is. That's what I like about JD. It feels like for the first time we actually have that. We have a management that actually has a real long-term plan. Jeremy, what was your first song to the first dance at your wedding? It was Van Morrison, Into the Mystic. Just wanted to quickly answer that just to show I know. So, yeah, I think they're talking about that it shouldn't be a first rounds pick. My bad, I'm drunk. Yeah, it's one of the things sometimes we do. So, okay, so you disagree with that. But, I mean, JD, at the end of the day, again, it's so funny because all this is a discussion. JD would have to make a very controversial or very questionable moves that made no sense in my mind for me to start outwardly questioning them. You know what I mean? Like certain things, I give him a pass and just say, okay, he knows more than me. Now, so I mean, don't get me wrong. If he didn't address edge or wide receiver with the top 2 picks, and he took, offensive lineman and Hamilton at 10 or something like that, it would be hard not to question those decisions.
Yeah.
I've said it before, but if we take Neal at 4, my trust in JD would take a significant hit. And is abysmal run blocking worth giving up on Fant for? Yes, Fant is 29, but the tread on the tires is low. Now, it is true that the tread on his tires, he didn't play a ton of snaps in the last bunch of years.
Well, he's in Seattle. He was so-so. He was average. If you remember when he came into New York, 3 for 30 or 3, whatever he got, 3 for 30 something was considered a gross overpay for the guy. Right. Mm-hmm. And year 1, George Fant wasn't that good. Let's call it spade a spade.
Yeah.
He wasn't that good year 1,
Right.
He came into his own last year playing on the left side. Maybe that's where his fit is better. So we're banking on that, the improvement that we saw in his age 28 year is going to continue, and I just don't know if you make I don't know if you make a $16 to $18 million a year investment on a guy who's soon to be 30 years old, banking on he had a good year last year.
Yeah.
I could see a 1 year. Hey, listen, you earned another year. Let's see if it's, if what you did last year is real again this year, or what you did this year is real again next year. I could see that. I just don't see a $16 million investment long term for a guy who's going to be 30, especially when JD has yet to dole out a 4-year contract to anybody. You know,
Yeah.
and his thing, his focus has been this whole time, guys coming out of their first contracts, getting their second contracts, that age 24, 25, 26, 27 years old. Those are the guys that he targets and he pays them with 2 and 3 year deals, you know? So for him to give a 3 or a 4 year deal to 30-year-old George Fant, just, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Friggle D comes in and says, I honestly don't know what's going to happen with the offensive line, but I can't wait to, it's like, get out the popcorn and watch, right? All I know is we're looking at a good offensive line this year. So we'll worry about next year, and the draft will unfold and give us a better idea what the plan for the future is, based on what they do. Friggle's saying, what's everyone's plans for the draft night? I'm going to watch Jets 24/7 with Green Bean, Ryan, and Matt. They're going to have a whole bunch of guests. I think there's a chance I'm going to be on Saturday, day 3, for like a 15-minute spot. I think that's going to happen, which I'm excited about. That'll be really cool. But I'm going to have them on. I'm going to have the TV on. I'm going to have I'm going to get a tripod. I'm going to use my light here. I'm going to figure out finally how to put my cell phone on it. And my wife is going to hit the record button every time it's the Jets' turn to pick, or if they announce something Jets related, so we can capture my reactions. And I could play my initial reactions, and then you could see my change over time, because a lot of times I'll be mad about a pick and then love the pick 2 days later, 3 days later, after learning more about them. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. I don't want to go on live on draft, during the draft, because the panel is going to be on, and that's where the big party is. But I did want to at least capture video of me watching the draft to utilize later, in a show.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got to bring the chaos. And like, if you want chaos, me watching a game, which you could see on Jets Nation with Green Bean, if you want to see the chaos from me when the Jets are playing or when the Jets are drafting, it's just got to be real time video on me, and then you'll see what the chaos is like. So, and I don't overplay it. I'm a little bit of a lunatic when I get excited. It's the top left tackle going for $23 million a year. Fant is worth $14 to $16 million a year, and you could structure like JFM contract. Okay, I think the disagreement is more about age than ability, and staying young and what our cap situation looks like. Not that I'd call it like a bitter disagreement, but I'm saying I think that's where I see the difference in what you're saying, Dom, and what Calvin is saying in the chat.
Yeah.
And and like I said, whatever happens, I think JD is going to work out what's best for our team. Talking about all wide receivers we picked up from the other teams. I don't know what that's in relation to. It's the problem with being so behind in the chat. Jeremy Cart, rumors that an offer to Fant was made and he's willing to play out the year and become a free agent. Okay. I believe that the contract is to be signed. Joe D will get it done. 30 for the OL is not old.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's what I said. I said, there's a little bit more longevity. I just don't see. I don't see a 3 or 4 year contract for George Fant. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't see a long-term one, unless there's not guarantees, unless they're easy to get out of team-friendly contracts.
Yeah.
I think, man, it depends on what we do in the draft is going to give us the answer. But I mean,
I'll tell you this. I'll say this to you, Jeremy, and to the chat. If there is a deal and JD gets it done, I hope it's before next Thursday.
Yeah.
Right. Because that'll definitely secure the bag that, we're probably going edge at 4.
I don't know. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we don't go edge and we take Ekwonu or Neal, I think it's telling us one of two things. There's some concern left without Becton, or there's concern that we're not going to be able to re-sign Fant, or a little bit of concern for both, but thinking there's that one of them is going to fall apart on us, right?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause there's two risky things. There's, are we going to be able to re-sign Fant at a price JD thinks it's fair? Or is another team going to swoop and come in and offer him the world? Or is Betson going to come back and have injury issues, right? So it might be those two factors that push JD into picking an edge, picking a tackle.
Yeah. So you know what? Let me ask you this, Jeremy. This is a something that I saw. You know, I was going back and forth on Twitter, not going back and forth with him, but Buffalo Jets fan posted something on Twitter that I thought was very interesting. That was very, very one-sided in regards to responses. I won't say how I feel, but I want to ask you. All right, here's the situation: Hutchinson, Thibodeau, and Ekwonu are off the board. 1, 2, and 3, whatever order they go. So we're at 4. Do you take Garrett Wilson at 4, or whatever your wide receiver 1 is at 4? Lock that down and hope an edge falls to you at 10.
I don't know if that's what I would do. I could live with it if I know it's. I mean, because I would know if they took a wide receiver at 4, it means it's a guy that JD is absolutely in love with.
Yeah.
It means that they believe in their hearts, from every inch of every cell in their body, that player is going to be incredibly special, right? And that there's something they see in the tapes that we don't see, because we're not comparing any of these guys as often to Chase and the guys from last year, Waddle and Dante Smith. So it would mean that to me. For us to do that with 4, that's what it would mean. Because I think if those guys were off the board and he didn't want to go tackle, I think it's going to be Hamilton. I think they're going to go for the unicorn. I think that will end up being, that's what he was talking about. Like, forget about position. When there's a unicorn there, you take them. So if he took a wide receiver, it would tell me that they are absolutely in love with him. They're saying to us, Jets fans, we're going to have an elite receiver, top, for years. This is going to be a tremendous part of the organization. I don't think there's any risk that they would be taking in their minds. I think it would be something that they believed with every cell of their soul. What I mean?
And it's funny because, I mean, it's what take it, with a grain of salt, but that similar situation was also mocked in Mel Kiper's most recent draft. He had the Jets taking Drake London at 10 and an edge. I forgot who it was. I think Jermaine Johnson, or Drake London at 4 and Jermaine Johnson at 10. Or something along those lines. So, yeah, I agree with you that the only way that I could see it happening was if they had that wide receiver up on their board as the guy, or they thought that they didn't have the group, the cluster of the 3 top guys that everyone talks about. They didn't have them clustered together, that they had one way above the other 2, or maybe the injuries in the other 2 take them completely off the board, or out of contention for the first round, for the first picks. So I thought it was an interesting question. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't like to see it done. But again, I'm going to defer to, what JD does and what he knows best. He hasn't faltered yet. He hasn't led me astray. There's not, actually, I shouldn't say that. There's been one pick where I really scratched my head at, and that's when they took James Morgan 2 years ago in the 4th round. That one made me say, but I think that was more Adam Gase influenced.
Yeah. I would imagine, or I don't know. I mean, the reality is nobody knows the exact dynamic except for one thing. JD was not solely in charge. He simply wasn't. That was the problem, right? That was the biggest, aside from Adam Gase himself, that was the biggest atrocity. It was the structure of that was horrible. Yeah. It was just horrible. It was a recipe for disaster. I'm surprised JD took the job in those conditions. It was absolutely a disgusting scenario to have a GM be equal to a coach. It just doesn't make sense. When it comes to personnel, it's 2 different skills. It really is. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that there are some coaches that don't end up being great GMs or aren't great evaluating talent. But it's two different jobs and two different positions. And what did Gase do in his life to deserve to have equal footing in that room on draft day?
What did Gase do in his life to deserve to have a second head coaching job the year after he got fired from one?
It's absolutely, well, he had a guy named Peyton Manning's blessing and as a reference. I mean,
I think he had naked pictures of Woody personally. So Drake London's on the board. Hey,
here he's saying that he'll be the pick at 10. He'll be the best receiver they just had in years, and I'll put the city on my back. I know who that really is, but I kind of, I kind of like to just go along with it as if it's true, as if that's how big we've become, Dom C. We got future prospects coming in here to hear our thoughts and make arguments for themselves.
And Drake, I'll tell you this, since you're in our chat, Jeremy can attest to it. I've been one of your biggest supporters out of all.
Absolutely. There's no argument there. If Drake London ends up being the best player out of this draft, I will admit and lay down, I will bow to you, my lord, and give it up to you. And I will do the same thing for Braden. If Greg Lloyd is much, much better than Nakobe Dean and ends up being the guy, I will bow to Braden Bethwaite. It looks like somebody finally made it into the show.
Hey, better late than never.
So tomorrow night, Iowa Jets fan is going to be on Green Bean's channel.
Hey,
he's going to be the guest on Monday Night Draft. And if you want to know, how do I get to be on Green Bean's channel? How do I get to be on his show and be part of the draft? Well, Green Bean has his Patreon account set up, or Patreon feature, where if you join Green Bean's Patreon, one of his levels, his tier 3 level, is $25 a month. And one of the features, aside from many, is that you get to be on his show.
And Reed's gonna do.
I think at least it's a minimum of an hour to an entire show.
Listen, and Iowa Jets fan, for those who don't know, the dude's awesome. He knows his shit. So I'm super stoked for him. Super stoked to see him tomorrow night, and I'll be there. I'll be haggling him.
Yeah. Iowan has been on this show. I've brought him in, and I think the obvious thing is me and Green Bean are very different places in where we are with our channel. So with my channel, you don't have to be a Patreon to be on the show. But then again, you're not going to have 300 people watching you or 400 people watching you. So there's a little bit of a difference. But
how many joined us tonight?
I think we peaked at 28-ish or something, which is not bad for Easter Sunday, but we've been hanging around 20 on average, I'd say. We're at 26 right now, which is kind of nice, but it's Easter Sunday. It's late on a Sunday night on Easter. So
I think we unfortunately lost some viewers with some of the technical difficulties earlier in the stream, but it worked itself out.
Yeah, it always does. And and I think that things will pick up and there's going to be a lot more crowds and bigger crowded rooms. Obviously, a lot of people are on vacation, on holiday right now. I think what's really going to start things up again is draft. Draft and OTAs and things like that will start to heat up again, and people will be back from their spring breaks and vacations. But I'm not complaining. I appreciate all the support. The fact that there are 25 people here now, the fact that my channel is less than 5 months old, I'm very happy and appreciative to everybody who's been supporting the channel and helping me get to this level so quickly. Where a lot of people have been doing it a lot longer and struggling to do that. And I owe a lot of people. And one of them is sitting right here in front of you, everybody, and that's Dom C. Just adding quality to the channel. I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's content, and every time I add one of you guys and, you make the channel stronger, I gain subscribers. You can't, there's no way to deny that. David Gerard comes in and says, sorry he's late. It's good to see you here.
Hey, Dave.
You'll rewatch. Hey, Dave, I'm giving you a lot to watch tomorrow. If you missed me before, my brother, we did a 49-minute show before where he was interviewing me. You'll have this show to rewatch, and also my State of Jets Nation will be coming out tomorrow at noon Eastern. So a lot of content coming out from me. I know that Matt O'Leary is, I believe, not maybe Matt, but I know Green Bean. A lot of people, Frankie. A lot of people are put things out there on Monday mornings. Actually, Frankie does the Tuesday News Day on Tuesday morning. So make sure you watch my stuff tomorrow, so you have time to watch Frankie's stuff on Tuesday. Makes sense. What did I miss? Tell me everything. But can sit down to like 5 minutes. Basically, we all agree that we really want edge, and that's our best case scenario at 4 if one of our guys are there. Our worst case scenario is that all the edges are gone and nobody wants to trade with us. Our best case scenario at 10, we all agreed, was that JD gets his number 1 receiver of choice, the highest guy on the board. Our worst case scenario is that our receiver is gone, is not there, and we don't get a good trade offer, and we have to reach or pick somebody that was
the worst case scenario. Yes. was we leave 4 and 10 with no edge.
Yes,
no edge.
That's the worst. Nothing worse than that. 16 more subs to 450. That's right. I'm thinking 500, guys. We get to 500. Big things are going to happen. I'm giving away 5 Boycott the Beat t-shirts when I hit 500. That is 5 Boycott the Beat t-shirts from Matt O'Leary. The beautiful thing about that is all the proceeds go to St. Jude, the children of St. Jude. And that is just some of the giveaways. I'm going to have a big giveaway party. There'll be some basketball cards and football cards and Star Wars toys if that's what you want, given away on that day. It'll be a nice celebration. I'm also going to torture myself with some heat, so I'll be consuming some hot stuff, whether it's sauce or these crazy ghost almonds I have, but you'll get to see me in pain. It's going to be a lot of fun on 500, but before I get to 500, well, maybe not. Maybe I'll get to 500 by the draft, which would be great. I also want to say I'm going to be doing some really fun things the days of the draft. So after the draft is over and everybody else is off air, I'm a late guy. I'm going to go on late and do some things. I'm going to offer Ryan. I'm going to let Ryan know if I'm on that day 3 of the draft, if I get on that show, I am going to talk up what I'm going to give away. I'm going to give away something very special, like a Jordan card or a Stephon Marbury rookie card. I'm going to give something very nice. I'm going to up the stakes in value. And I am going to announce right now, I may as well talk about it. If I do get to 500 subs before the draft, I'm going to give something special away for that as an added bonus to just the 5 t-shirts.
I think the 5 t-shirts is awesome.
I think it's cool, man. I love giving that stuff to people, and and I love raising money for helping Matt O'Leary out and raising money for that cause. So I think it's good, and I really, when we hit these milestones, I want to celebrate with the people that are here. Like I love when Iowan or when Dark Soldier wins, or if Jets Mess wins. Like I want it to be the guys that are here: J. Cole, Gitmo Bob, Stanley now, the guys that are here really supporting us in and inside and out, constantly here supporting us. These are the guys. Tom Bon Jovi. I mean, there's so many. I'm blessed to have so many people that are supporting the channel. Dave Gerard, but I'm really hoping that one of those guys wins. It'll be great. Let's see if we got follow.
Mess doesn't like my suggestion of Laviska Shenault. I'm not saying I want the guy. I was just trying to think of something of equal or fair value that would make sense player for player, brother. And I still think it makes sense. You don't have to like it.
So David Gerard likes thanks for saying that, man, because I didn't know if it was cheesy or if people appreciated that I give that stuff away, but I'm glad that you like it. It's only the beginning, man. It's only the beginning. I'm afraid to open it. I have this pack of cards, and I'm trying to figure out what the value of it is unopened, like with the sticker sealed. Because apparently, when I look at these emotion cards that are, when I look at it online, some of them are worth a lot of money. So I'm trying to figure out: do I want to open it and hope I get one of those valuable cards, or do I want to give away the whole pack if I can, conclude what the value of an unopened pack is? So I got a lot of good stuff coming. I really do. Baseball cards. If you like baseball cards, guys, man, I got a ton of those. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to give away. It's a lot of fun to give it away. It's a lot of fun to celebrate subscribers. And it's a lot of fun to, get onto other people's channels, give things away, promote the channel. I'm enjoying it. It was really, it was a great gratitude to my brother who gave me a lot of this stuff or gave me tons of this stuff to give away. And I appreciate that he is okay with me giving them away to other people as prizes.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The shipping is killing me, though. That's why I said I'm going to take a break from Star Wars toys and just give away cards because I can put it in plastic and send it regular mail. It's like every time I put one of those Star Wars toys in a package, it's like $12 or something. It's more expensive than the
Figure
prize.
itself.
Yeah, exactly. So you spent like $100 in Topps cards since Monday. Well, let me know what kind of cards you like, Dave. David, I have a lot of Fleer, Don Ross, Upper Deck, and Topps from the early 90s, late 80s, like 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. Like I have a lot of those sets of cards. So just so you know. And I'm very jealous that you have a local Wawa because that means that anytime you want, you could go there and get a hoagie. And let me tell you something, they might not be as good as the authentic Philly places, but for a rest stop type place like Wawa, those hoagies are pretty darn good.
You don't have any Wawas out in California?
No.
Is it an East Coast thing?
It took forever just to get to Jersey, man. Like a friend of mine who lives in Jersey, the first time I saw a Wawa on the way to his house, I lost my shit. I was
Really?
jumping up and down in the car. I was so happy just to go in there and grab. They even get the Philly soft pretzels delivered out to them. So you can get a real authentic Philly soft pretzel at a Wawa. Like it was like it was the best day for me. I was so happy.
So there's a new thing around here. I mean, it's not new. It's probably about 10 years old. They've been around. I think it's called I actually think it's called Philadelphia Pretzel Company, where they sell, they got the hot pretzels and the cinnamon sugar if you want that, the cheese if you want that, or the straight up whole grain mustard if you want that. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Have you seen? Well, they actually have one in Virginia, David. They made it down to Virginia as well. Because when I drive down to North Carolina from New York to visit my parents, there's a rest stop in Virginia that has Wawa. The problem with Pennsylvania is the part of Pennsylvania I was closest to when I lived in upstate New York, like when I went through, they have a deal with what's the name of that? They have a place with the Sheets. Wawa and Sheets have like a gentlemanly arrangement. They split up Pennsylvania. So there's a side of Pennsylvania that has like no Wawa. It's all Sheets. And then the other side of Pennsylvania has all Wawas. And I'm so angry about it. I'm like, don't play nice with them, Wawa. Take them out of business. Just open up everywhere, Philly pretzel and cheesesteak is amazing. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, man, I'm telling you, I haven't gotten to try the Philadelphia Pretzel Company, but I've read about them online, and I was wondering if they're authentic. Are they the real deal? Because
they're good.
Yeah,
they're good. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice hot pretzel, man.
Because there's a place in the market in the middle of Philly Central, when you go to the giant market there, with all the butchers and stuff. There's a place in the back, this Amish stand that has like the best soft pretzels in the world. And I dream about those freaking pretzels. It's just like a never-ending thing. This is the first time Snacks has smiled all night. Food talk. That's funny. Sheets is funny because we always make these funny jokes about Sheets. Like, I don't give a Sheets. Like, it's like, is there a Wawa? No, it's a Sheets. Oh, I don't give a Sheets about that. If you eat at Sheets, it gives you the sheets.
Oh, boy.
But apparently they have something good. Sheets has phenomenal Cheeto mac and cheese. Okay. I'm not going to be on the East Coast for a while. So actually, I'm going to be near a Sheets in North Carolina in June because there's a Sheets near the airport in Raleigh-Durham. So I am the kind of guy that'll drive out to a Sheets near the airport if I know they have something special like Cheeto macaroni and cheese. I have no problem with that. Anyway, yeah, Texas barbecue brisket, man. I love all kinds of brisket. But when I was in Houston, I had some good brisket. I'm not complaining. Look at this. Jeremy doesn't appreciate me anymore, no matter how well behaved I am. He cries and cries. Dude, every time you put up a chat or a discussion question, I throw it into the show. I don't know what you're complaining about. And you have been more behaved, and we appreciate that, Young Spaghetti / J. Cole /
Drake London.
Drake London. I think we're going to wrap it up, guys. I know it's getting really late there. It's even getting late for me on the West Coast. I got to wake up really early and go back to work and have the Monday blues and be really depressed soon. So, thank you again, Dom C. Good night. I think that was a good show.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody in the chat for watching. Thank you again to Paul Riley out there. We'll definitely have him on a guest on one of the shows in the future. And Nathan Colgrove, thank you. Iowan Jets fan, thanks for coming. Young Spaghetti, thanks for being here. Stanley Spector, man, I hope you're well. Hope you enjoy the draft on draft night. And to everybody else, I hope you had a great holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate. And I look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday on the Wacky Wednesday show. Take care, everybody. Be good. And, more important than anything, live your best life, people. Live your best life.
I would regret it if people look back at the first episode and you weren't on it.
Yeah, well, I like that. It's called forward thinking.
We have one of the worst beats in the world. We do. Our beat is horrible.
Connor could shove that article up his ass.
And then I went to that game, and I was like, this is the greatest team I've ever seen in my life. I'm a Jet fan. This is going to be the greatest run ever. Yeah.
No, because if they take Ekwonu, I'm not complaining.
Joe Douglas is the king of keeping shit close to the vest.
A 2, a 4, and a 6 for Darnold?
Did the Jets really ruin Sam Darnold, or did Sam Darnold just suck all along, and we were just trying to talk ourselves into it?
And Hamilton is a player who can potentially make a very big impact.
And suddenly here we are today. You can't get rid of him.
Right. It's like a plague.
Joe Douglas was hired because he's not those general managers.
Okay, Luscious.
Somebody is going to fall just like Elijah Moore did, just like Michael Carter did.
What would, if you had one sentence to say to Joe Douglas, what would you say? So you would say, you had me at hello, and then give